Good evening, folks. We'll be getting started shortly. If you're here this evening wishing to address the Commission, I do ask you to fill out a card on any of the items on tonight's agendas. We have a couple or two different types of cards here at the podium. One is the speaker pink card. Make sure to fill that out if you would like to address the Commission. There is an alternative card. I believe it's a beige or a peach colored, or yellow, I'm sorry. And that one is just if you want to submit your opinion on a project. So I will ask if you want to speak on a topic, please make sure to fill out one of the appropriate cards. We'll be starting here in a couple minutes. Thank you. Good evening. We would like to call to order the West Covina Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. Let the record reflect it is 7:02. Everyone, I will ask everyone stands for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then let's have a moment of silent prayer and meditation. It will be led by Commissioner Heng.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please take a seat. Roll call.
Commissioner Holtz? Here. Commissioner Redholz?
Here.
Commissioner Hing? Here. Commissioner Castellanos?
Here.
Chairman Jimenez?
Here. Approval of minutes for the regular meeting of August 28th, 2018. Are there any changes or modification? Seeing none, they stand as approved. Moving on to oral communications, this is the time and place set for any member of the public who wishes to address the commission on any item that is not within the scope of the duties tonight. Again, this is specifically for anyone wishing to speak on items that are non-agendized. I do have a speaker card from Angie. I believe you put down for a non-agendized item, and I believe you would like to speak during this moment. Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure.
I would like to speak, but I also have a couple of my longtime neighbors who would also have submitted letters in opposition of the ADUs and the changing of the standards on housing. So one is of a 65-year resident, another is a 59-year resident, and then myself. If I allowed, I know I have 5 minutes, so I'm going to begin. First of all, I am here to oppose the selling of alcohol at gas stations. Once again, we hear from the owner of the gas station, Chevron, who believes that people who stop at his gas station to fill up and leave empty-handed is a loss for his station. We will continue to hear from these types of stations that expanded their locations with these mini stores who want to compete with grocery markets or stores such as Bevmo who specialize in the selling of alcohol. I am pro-business such as Bevmo, which is just, by the way, 1,000 feet away from those who don't know within that same shopping center behind this gas station. The residents who live in this city, by large, don't purchase their alcohol at gas stations. Why are we accommodating the people who pass through our city to fill up their cars with gasoline and create a potential problem when they get in their cars to get back on the highway and create a bigger problem? Secondly, granny flats. I support the two Commissioner Holtz and Redholz on maintaining the current standards that this city has in place as far as secondary homes being built on residents' property. We do not wish to change the suburban life we have here in West Covina to change to a more dense type cities such as Los Angeles or other major cities. All of us have had aging parents and grandparents when we purchased a home. If the issue is caring for these family members, I would recommend that they do what I had to do when my mother needed care. We moved her into a senior living community. I did not think to come to this city to accommodate my personal situation in the changing of our city standards. Thank you for hearing me out. May I read the other two? I have time. Would that be okay? Thank you. This is from Robert Kirk and Noreen Kirk, 65-year residents. I am writing to oppose the changing of the city code regarding accessory dwelling units, ADUs. If residents need more room for additional family members, current plans already exist. They are called room additions. If the occupants want privacy, simply submit plans that would shield the new addition from the existing structure, such as a common wall or a locked door. I understand the lay terminology for these ADUs is granny flats. This terminology renders a description of a quiet elderly woman of ADU occupant. How quaint. But what happens when the granny dies? Who will occupy that ADU? Another granny or perhaps another family member? Or perhaps several people who don't mind sharing facilities in a trade-off for low rent? Where will these people park? Probably on the streets that are already being used by current residents and homeowners as public parking structures, and storage units. West Covina was conceived as a suburb of a single-family residence. Although times change, you have the capacity to retain that concept by not allowing high-density housing in our neighborhood. Just because a minority of the population figures, if they are vocal enough, adamant enough, and persistent enough in their effort to modify current rules, that you will grant them their request. We have lived in West Covina for 65 years. We ask that you keep our current building code and keep West Covina beautiful. Again, that was from Robert and Noreen Kirk. Lastly, from the Glicks, who are 59-year residents, my family chose to live in West Covina as the community in which we would like to live many years ago. One of the major factors for the choice was the city's relatively quiet, uncrowded suburban ambiance. Changing building codes which would allow more density, situated residential buildings, and more crowded lot development would, without a doubt, destroy the desirable character of our city. Albert and Anita Glick. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the commission on items not agendized for this evening? Okay, let the record reflect there are no additional speakers under oral communication.
Jose.
Yes.
You might want to clarify that the ADUs is on tonight's agenda.
Okay. Yeah, the comments addressed alcohol 1 and then 2 granny flats, but there could be bits and pieces, so just, okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Anyone else, again, wishing to speak under oral communication? Okay. So moving on to public hearings, item number 2 on the agenda is a conditional use permit, 1805. It's categorical exemption. The applicant is Sam Alduxa for 1227 Inspiration Point. This is a request for a CUP for a large home construction of a 1,252 square foot basement addition and a 465 square foot ground floor addition to an existing single family residence. Jeff? Presentation, please.
So our planning intern, Megan Wu, will be presenting that report.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. The item before you tonight is Conditional Use Permit 18-05, a request for a large home. This project is categorically exempt under the California Environmental Quality Act, since the project consists of the remodeling of an existing single-family residence on an individual lot. For lots with a lot area between the areas of 20,000 square feet and 24,999 square feet, the maximum allowable unit size is 4,000 square feet or 35% of the lot area, whichever is less. The subject property is 21,363 square feet. Therefore, the maximum allowable unit size for the property is 4,000 square feet. A conditional use permit is required for a large home when the proposed addition exceeds the maximum allowable unit size by more than 25%, which would be 5,000 square feet in this case. The proposed home would have a total floor area of 6,677 square feet and requires a CUP for a large home. Findings were made for the CUP, which can be found in the staff report before you. The existing house was built in 2016 as a part of the Taylor Morrison development. The house currently has 5 bedrooms and 5.5 bathrooms. The first story includes a master retreat with an exclusive bathroom and closet, kitchen, pantry, family room, living room, powder room, and a 3-car garage. The second story includes 4 bedrooms, all with exclusive bathrooms, a laundry room, and a bonus room. The proposed additions include a 465 square foot extension of the first floor that will lead to a 1,252 square foot basement comprised of a home theater, office, living room, bathroom, and outdoor seating area. The existing master bedroom will be redesigned to allow a hallway leading into the new addition. The house with the proposed addition would have 5 bedrooms and 6.5 bathrooms. Staff reviewed the neighborhood surrounding the subject property and found that the area consists primarily of 2-story single-family houses that were constructed from 2014 to present. Staff conducted a survey of 16 homes surrounding the subject property. The houses in the survey are located on Inspiration Point. The surveyed homes consisted of 2-story houses with 3-car garages. This chart shows the mean and median lot size, square footage of the homes, number of bedrooms, and floor area ratio of the surveyed homes. The mean is the average of all 16 homes, and the median is the number that falls directly in the middle if listed in numerical order. The house sizes range from 4,788 square feet to 6,488 square feet. The lot sizes of the surveyed homes range from 20,000 square feet to 25,450 square feet, while the lot size of the subject property is 21,363 square feet. Floor area ratios range from 19% to 31%. The proposed floor area ratio of the subject property is 31%. The house, as proposed, would be 1.2 times larger than the average size of the surrounding surveyed homes of 5,518 square feet. Although the proposed house would be 1.2 times larger than the average house size, the house would be about the same size as the largest home in the neighborhood, which is 6,488 square feet. Okay, so here's the site plan, and the addition is to the rear yard, and that's where the basement and the first floor addition will be. This is the existing first floor. This is where the first floor addition, 465 square foot addition will be, a hallway connecting to the addition, and French doors from the master bedroom. This is the proposed basement. Sorry, just disregard the blue prints over here, but this is the home theater, the office, the game room, and the outdoor seating area. Comes out to a total of 1,252 square feet. This is the east and west elevation of the first floor addition. The roof materials and all the materials will be consistent with the existing. This is the elevation from the rear yard. And then this is the section from the cross section from the rear yard, showing the theater, the game room, and the first floor addition. This is the section showing the interior of the addition. This is the first floor addition, and then leading down to the basement. Okay. The proposal includes a 465 square foot first floor addition, a 1,252 square foot basement addition. The house with the proposed additions will be 6,677 square feet, and the surrounding neighborhood consists of two-story homes. The proposed size of the home is 1.2 times larger than the average size of the surrounding homes, but is approximately the same size as the largest home in the neighborhood, which is 6,488 square feet. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for a large home, and staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving conditional use permit 18-05. Conditions of approval include that a covenant agreement shall be recorded with the LA County Recorder's Office specific to the use of the approved basement prior to the issuance of building permits. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Reynolds, please.
Yeah, I have one question. Other than what's in front of us tonight, is there any other approved work being done on that house that we know of?
No, not that we know of.
Because I was out there today, there's a lot of work going on. I'm just wondering if that's related to this or something else.
From the only thing that we know from staff is that they have some landscaping that they're doing on the lot, but otherwise they could be doing some interior work. The architect is here. The applicant is present for any questions.
Any additional questions? Okay, maybe we can invite the applicant or the architect to come and talk to us, please. Come to the podium. Name and address for the record, please.
As far as what's going on in that house right now, I don't think there's anything done except for what they got approved for landscape and a pool, maybe?
Yes.
which I don't know if they're going to do it right now or after we do the, the addition on the subterranean addition. The whole purpose of this is basically personal use. It's a single-family home. The whole use of the underground addition is basically entertainment. That's basically it. And the additional, on the first floor is kind of extending the existing master bedroom, which is 15 by 20. Compared to this large house, it doesn't make any sense. That's basically it. All right?
All right, thank you. We may ask you to come back after we open this item. Okay. Going to open this up for any public comments from members of the public. I don't have any speaker cards, but I do invite you, if you're interested in speaking on this item, just come up and just fill out a card. Okay. Let the record reflect, no public testimony, so let's close that portion. Go back to commission discussion. Anyone wishing to take this?
Maybe a question for staff. How unusual is it for a basement type addition like this? I don't think we've ever had one that I can recall.
You are correct. I don't, the 13 years that I've been here, I think, Jeff, I'm not sure if you've experienced a basement this large.
Pretty unusual. That's how I would describe it too, yes.
I'd like to add that I went there, I think, twice. Once during the weekends and again today, try to see if I can go to the next door neighbors to take a look at it. I have a concern because during the huge development that they had there, there's a huge view around the home in that area. Now we're extending more toward the back. If you look at the old development that they just finished a year or two ago, they incorporate that whole area, taking a look at the entire view, so that if we keep adding to the back, it's blocking, to some extent, it's blocking the neighbors next door or above. It may, that's something that we need to look into. We did approve something a few months ago, and I guess the consequence was we were not looking at it from the neighbor's perspective. We were only looking at the time at the home. So I guess this time around, I was trying to see if I can look at both sides to see how much it's affecting the view, because after all, I believe the majority of the homeowners over there bought the homes due to the view, whether it's to the LA or to the east or to the north. So that's a huge consideration. I am okay if they just don't want to do the development regarding just the basement, but not the additions, the additional rooms, pulling it toward the back, and it may impact the neighbor's backyard as well if we were to have the first story pulling it a little bit, a whole more toward the backyard, because it's not just the backyard, because it's the view that they're blocking. So I'm concerned about that.
Commissioner Hing, thank you. Commissioner Redholz?
Well, I just want to say one thing, just to remind people that we as a city do not have a view ordinance. Is that correct? There's nothing to stop somebody.
Well, so yeah, there's no view ordinance, but I think that the city put in effect the second story requirement for an administrative use permit and the notification to allow for that type of discussion. Although I think one thing we find here is no neighbors have come to us and stated a concern, and they're not here tonight. So I appreciate the concern, but that's the way the city is put in place to allow that discussion to happen. So,
Right, that was my next point, where the neighbors, there's no one here. Right. The neighbors that are most directly affected were notified, and they are not here to be heard. As a commission, we can't think for these, if they have that much concern, then they should be here to defend their case, make their case that it should not be allowed. And, it's interesting that is this discussion now? Or, sure. Yeah. That these Taylor Morrison homes, I think most of them have come back to us over the last couple of years for some type of alteration. Maybe not most of them, but a lot of them have come back to us for alterations. They want to make them bigger or expand them or somehow change them, which I find interesting because they're not that old. You know, they're 2016, they were built. And I've gone out there many times because these homes have been agendized for some type of change, which I find, you know, those homes ain't cheap. And, you know, they're pretty large to begin with, and yet the people that bought them have decided that, you know, they need to change them. But, you know, as far as this one in front of us tonight, you know, there's no variance here. It's just a conditional use permit, which is required to do this kind of work. It has to come to us. There's a public hearing, which we're conducting tonight. You know, as you can see, the only person that spoke on it was the architect of the project. There's nobody here for or against. They're in line with everything. So, you know, it's kind of hard for me as a commissioner to say no. So I won't be saying no.
Thank you, Commissioner Redholz. Anyone else wishing to comment? Commissioner Castellanos?
Well, I'll echo Commissioner Redholz's sentiment. There's no one here in opposition, and I think that's a factor that those are custom homes, and I think the neighborhood can expect that people want to make custom changes to those homes. I can also appreciate what Commissioner Heng mentioned about the view rights. I have heard that brought up by some residents on a few occasions. But as we were reminded this evening, we don't have an ordinance to that effect, at least not yet. I haven't heard enough support to potentially initiate a code amendment, but it is something that's always on the table for us to do if we hear enough of that concern in the neighborhood. I don't know that we're quite there yet, but it is a valid observation. But I do agree with Commissioner Redholz again with it's a custom home, and it seems to me that the neighbors have that in mind, that you know, maybe some of the neighbors want to continue that and do some custom changes as well. So for those reasons, I'm going to be in support of this, but also, you know, suggestions by the public are always welcomed for anything that might be of concern to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Castellanos. Commissioner Holtz?
And not to be redundant, I'm in favor of the project. We can't certainly turn it down if there's no ordinance to say that we can do that. So I'm in favor of the project.
If I just may add, from a land use perspective, I think there's some self-mitigation here to try to limit the visual impacts. I mean, who is actually going to dig out a 1,200 square foot basement? That's a huge undertaking. In essence, that in and of itself is a mitigation measure to try to address or limit the impacts of views. So at the end, you're really looking at at grade level, a 400 plus square foot addition. So I would agree that yes, the applicant has at least thoughtfully designed a project that maybe tries to address that in the absence of a view ordinance in the city. So I'm also in favor of approving the request. Do any takers on a motion?
Could I read the ordinance number before we do that?
Well, before we close this up, I like to add that, you know, I did know a neighbor that had an addition to the next door neighbors. They ultimately at the end decided to sell their house due to the renovations of what the next door neighbor is doing. And they're just adding one room over, but that one particular room is blocking the view of the next door neighbor, which I believe they're not really understanding the whole codes and the whole due process here. So as planning commissioners, we're here to not only to see what the next door neighbors do or not do, but we also need to look at the overall futures of that particular street. One by one, if they're coming to add, and then they keep pushing it back and is blocking all the views, that becomes an issue as the city as a whole. So I am concerned due to the fact that I am aware that one resident actually is selling their house due to the fact that they blocked the view. They bought it because of the view, downtown view or view of the north or view of the mountain. I don't know what view it is that they got, but they got some view. But everyone in that particular street has a little bit different view of the city, of the mountains, and what have you. Some are prettier, some is not as, you know, I mean, they're so beautiful no matter what, but it's just not everyone has all that view. So I am okay if they are doing the addition of the basement, which will not add on to the point that they're not disturbing the view of the next door neighbor, especially if the next door neighbor do not have that, I guess their yard is not as big, so they're carving out of a mountain. So that's a huge concern. So it's not only as planning commissioners, we're not only speaking for the neighbor, you know, to the right or to the left, that if they're not understanding or they're not coming to speak for their value of the home or what have you. We also need to look into the future as well for resale value and how we can keep the integrity in on that in our city.
Thank you. And I guess the only comments I would have is that we may be hovering between a policy decision and a land use decision. And so this evening, what we're trying to focus is on this project, and I hate to use the word hearsay, but it believes that the information you received is something that maybe the rest of the commission is not privy to. And second, I'm not sure if that would affect or impact our recommendation. I think because as a record, as we said already, there's really no view protection ordinance that we can fall back on. And although I understand that there is concern that we want to look at that long term, I think we just want to be rather careful between tonight's land use decision versus a policy directive. That would be my thought. Jeff, I think you wanted to...
Well, I'd like to add the fact that just because we don't have a land or a view ordinance, the 5 of us are land view ordinance. That's it.
Thank you.
Well, I want to clarify, it's true, there's nothing in the code that discusses the view impacts, but one of the findings, the last finding that you have before you, is it does talk about view impacts. So there is a way to do that, and that's the reason, again, going back why the city instituted the second story requirement. When mansionization was first discussed here, there wasn't a second story requirement for an administrative use permit. That was added later as partially for this reason. Partially it was view, partially it was privacy impacts. So those issues do come up, and that's why it is a finding. But not to belabor the point anymore, the resolution number would be 18-5962.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a first by Commissioner Redholz.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Castellanos.
Roll call. Commissioner Holtz?
Aye.
Commissioner Redholz?
Aye.
Commissioner Hing?
No.
Commissioner Castellanos?
Aye.
Chairman Jimenez?
Aye. The 4-1 vote. Your application is approved, and it's subject to a 14-day appeal period. 10-day, I apologize. Thank you, Commissioner Redholz. Moving around here, Jeff, we're moving on to item number 3. This is a conditional use permit number 1803. It's a categorical exemption for the applicant, Kristen Nicoletti, for People's Care. The property in question is 1532 East Amar Road. This is a request for a CUP to allow for an adult daycare facility within an existing 9,800 square foot tenant space. The project is currently located in the service commercial, that is the SC zone. No new construction is proposed. Staff, presentation?
Our presentation for that will be from our planning intern, Eric Mariquin.
Thank you.
Good evening. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow an adult daycare program for the development of disabled adults. The proposed site is located within an existing 9,803 square foot building in the southeast corner of the Island Plaza Commercial Center. This project is categorically exempt under California Environmental Quality Act. The zoning designation is service commercial, and the general plan zoning designation is commercial. The abutting land uses are to the north, Seafood City Shopping Center; to the south, Brook Hollow Apartments; to the east, Woodside Village Apartments; and to the west, Island Plaza. Before you, you have an aerial. As mentioned before, it is located in the southeast corner of the Island Plaza Commercial Center. The subject site is indicated in red. Before you, you have the site plan, which I will go into further detail later. And before you have the floor plan, which which I will also go into further detail a little bit later in the presentation. The applicant currently operates an adult daycare program on 1416 South Azusa Avenue in West Covina. People's Care will provide support services and programs for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The program will empower participants by supporting their social, behavioral, and vocational needs. The applicant has indicated that the center will be open 5 days per week. Business hours will be Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. The interior of the tenant space will include offices, workstations, a kitchen, a lunchroom, a living studio, classrooms, a computer lab, an artisan shop, a community room, a nurse's room, shower room, changing room, and 2 restrooms. The facility will be providing transportation as needed for their clients. The maximum number of clients is 75, and the maximum number of employees will be 12. The center currently has 679 parking spaces available, while 650 spaces are required based on sizes and uses of the business within the center. The parking demand for the center would be limited to employees only, which is anticipated to be no more than 12 at any given time. A retail use in the tenant space would require 39 parking spaces based on the 9,803 square foot tenant space. People's Care facility will provide transportation as needed for their clients. The vast majority of clients are dropped off in dedicated client drop-off, The vast majority of clients are dropped off in the dedicated client drop-off location in the handicapped parking space in front of the tenant space, significantly limiting and alleviating on-site circulation, on-site parking, and street congestion on Amar and Azusa Avenue. Based on the proposed use, the limited use hours of operation, the existing use at its site, and the anticipated parking demand will not exceed the amount of parking available. Staff recommends approval of project as historically adult daycare centers generally have limited impact on neighboring uses. Staff believes that the addition of the proposed adult daycare facility will be a unique and beneficial addition to the Island Plaza Commercial Center and provide a complementary service to the surrounding area. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving conditional use permit number 18-03. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions from staff, from the commission? Commissioner Redholt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question. Are we talking about it says that it's vacant here. Isn't that the site of the Giant Dollar? Or or am I missing that?
It's on the opposite. It's the opposite. It's the tenant space directly adjacent to it.
Directly adjacent to it?
Yes.
Correct. There's 9,800 square feet that's...
So that would be... Okay.
So here's the building of the tenant space here. There's a tenant.
Right.
It's this building is taken up by another tenant. So we're taking the western half of that building.
Part of that location is vacant. Part of that address. So it's like A and B, 1532 A and B.
Correct.
So you're talking about B?
Correct.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, where there's a for lease sign on that window right now.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, that's 9,800 square feet?
It's a pretty deep, the building's pretty deep.
Wow.
You can see, again, this is the rear area, this the shopping center, there's parking back here. There's also a loading dock in that area.
Yeah, no, I went around it today. It just, okay. And how is that, when people are being dropped off, they're going to be dropped off in the handicap spaces? What if there's cars in the handicap spaces?
So they'll be dropped off, in discussion with the applicant, they'll be dropped off in front of the tenant space within the parking lot.
But within a designated parking space, or is there an area designated for overflow, unloading and unloading, loading and unloading activity?
Essentially, based on the site plan, they would just be unloading and loading in front of, within that drive aisle.
We may have additional follow-up
or parking
questions to
space.
that, maybe, after we talk to the applicant.
Yeah,
if
the
they
applicant
can
may
come.
have a better
Okay.
idea of how they're planning on doing that.
Fair enough. Any other questions from the commission for staff? No? Okay. Jeff, Ron, you wanted to add something, or? Oh, okay. I heard some back and forth there. Maybe, yeah, we can invite the applicant to come down, talk to us a little bit about the proposal and answer a couple questions we have so far. Name and address for the record, please.
I am Krista Nicoletti, and my home address is 29216 Baker Lane, Murrieta, California. Do you want me to just start with the parking?
Yeah,
or?
if you could maybe just talk a little bit about the proposal. I think you've heard a question related to loading and unloading activities. How is that all going to work?
Absolutely. We have anywhere from a 6 to 11 passenger van that we use. We park the vans there at the center overnight, and then we travel in the mornings to all the homes to pick up the individuals that want to participate in the program that day. There is staff with them at all times in the van, depending on the level of independence that's in that van. We may have one staff member, we may have two. So if the handicap parking is available, the van will pull in and staff will physically unload each individual and escort them into the building. If handicap is taken, then we can absolutely pull into a standard parking lot, and staff will again escort the individuals into the building. They're not left on their own to walk in. They're never unsupervised. That's part of our commitment to the state of California and the regional center, is that they're always in our care.
Question, or, okay.
You may ask the same question.
It may be. So apparently you're relocating from the other location?
Correct. Right now we have a licensed facility on Azusa Avenue. Our capacity is only 45 there, and both community care licensing and the San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center would like us to offer more services. And the facility that we're in now, it's really run down and the landlord doesn't want to participate. The legislation has changed for adult daycare programs, and we want to offer the most state-of-the-art programs that we can for these individuals so they can increase their independent living and their vocation skills. So we've been at the Azusa Avenue address since 2008. So we just hit our 10th year.
We were on here when we approved that back in '08. And so you're at the, kind of in the back of the South Hills Center.
We are. We have both the 2 floors in that building.
Okay, so can we assume that a majority of your patients, clients, would now go to the new one?
They will, yes.
Okay, so the one that you're currently at, I guess, has been pretty successful in 10 years. Huh?
Yeah, and we're at capacity, and we would like to be able to offer more services. So that's why the newer facility is much bigger, and we'll be able to get up to 75 individuals in there.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any additional questions from the commission? If you can, just a couple or 3 points really to address. One, what type of vehicles will be loading, unloading? Is it like an Econoline type van?
We have both the handicap vans that have the lifts on them. Standard, they fit in a standard parking spot. We don't do any of the oversized dial-a-ride or anything like that, all the way down to something similar to like a Toyota Sienna. So we have some 6-passenger, and then we have the larger with the lift gate for the wheelchairs.
Okay, and all drop-off loading and unloading will occur within a designated parking spot? No driveway aisles, no blocking of the driveway?
No, we wouldn't do it right in front of the door. There's no safety there, and
Okay.
It's painted red, so our vans wouldn't pull up there.
Or the driveway aisles that are used for egress?
No, the driveway aisle
ingress.
is red, right.
Okay.
I would imagine they're the same vans that are at the other location now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A couple new ones.
Yeah, because I've seen those vans. I mean, you guys are, picking up people and dropping them off
Yes.
up and down Azusa there, so same vans.
Okay, thank you. We're going to open this up for public testimony. We may invite you back
Absolutely.
to provide a little bit
Thank
of a
you very
rebuttal.
much.
Thank you. Okay. I do have a speaker card on this item from Jim Grivich. at 1227 East Service. Would you like to come up and address the commission? Mr. Grivich, thank you.
Yes, usually I've been speaking, I think, mostly to the council. The commission, it's been a while. This particular one, the reason I'm here is I had a significant personal interaction with the provider People's Care 10 years ago relative to my brother, who's profoundly disabled, being placed in one of their facilities. And in that interaction, I discovered that People's Care was not interested in compliance with building codes. When I visited the facility, I was summoned actually because I was told my brother was going to be placed there that day. I discovered the facility had a large number of building codes violations. I have some expertise in that area. And when I presented that information to Mr. Kaiser, who is actually the president of the organization, he was not interested in responding to those problems. And subsequently, I got involved with the city of San Gabriel, which is where it was located, and they basically said, which I think is similar to West Covina's policy, if nobody complains, they don't deal with building code violations. And they actually were doing a huge remodel, actually something sounds similar to what they want to do here, and they never pulled any permits or asked for any inspections or any of that. And they were using unlicensed folks to do the work, and that's probably why the work was being done badly. I ended up in court. I spent $30,000 of my brother's inheritance to keep him out of that facility. The part that really amazed me through this whole process was the state licensing, who I had been led to believe actually cared about the safety of developmentally disabled, did not care about this issue. I documented myself quite a bit. There was a huge pile of paper that was presented to court. And the judge's final ruling had an interesting statement to go with it. Basically, if my brother was hurt or killed by these code violations, the judge himself would be personally liable. That's what he said in open court. Not to mention People's Care and all the other people associated with the regional center. As you can tell, I had a very negative experience with this organization. Ultimately, the court said my brother didn't have to be placed with them, and he wasn't, even though they tried the whole time, which was a period of 4 months, to make it so. So I don't know if this city is proactive on things like this. In my opinion, nobody should be in this facility until it's been totally signed off by code inspection. I was told that when City of San Gabriel actually told them they had to do these things, they said, well, we can take the clients anyway. That's why I ended up in court. And so I'm basically asking this group to not allow them to use this facility for clients until all the codes inspections have been made and signed off. That's my essential request. Because I don't think they will do it on their own. And of course, what happened to me was 10 years ago. Maybe things have changed, but I do know I checked it. Mr. Kaiser is still in charge, so I have no reason to believe it's any different now. With the disabled community, they can't speak for themselves. They don't know things are not safe. And you're probably not even aware of this because I have an advocacy in the disabled community. When the state decided to shut down the developmental centers and place clients in the community, one thing happened that essentially everybody's ignored, but it's happened. The death rate rose dramatically when these people moved out in the community. And the state essentially doesn't care. And I've spent a lot of time advocating on this, but as I said, they don't care. And it doesn't, because these folks are disabled, it doesn't rise to public awareness. Except I did get a page 1 article in the LA Times about it years ago, but that didn't change anything. So anyway, that's my story, and I really appreciate it if this city would at least be vigilant on this subject for the folks that are involved with this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grivich. Anyone else speaking, wishing to speak, I should say, on this item? I have no additional cards. Okay, going once, going twice. Kristen, would you like to come up and try to address some of the concerns and rebut? for a few minutes. Thank you.
I'm not able to discuss what happened 10 years ago. I joined People's Care just a little over 7, but I can tell you that with this facility in particular, and we have 62 homes across the state. We have 11-day programs. We employ over 1,200 employees. We serve over 1,000 clients. All of our renovations are done through the benefit of a permit. We are finishing up our drawings now, our mechanical drawings that are needed to submit our plans, hopefully in the next 10 days for the city of West Covina. That's just the way we operate now. With all of our construction projects, we use licensed bonded contractors. We have full sets of architectural plans. We follow the permit process. Not only do we have to abide by the city of West Covina and finish the building permit the way you approve it, we also have to get it licensed through community care licensing, which happens after you guys walk away. And we have filled it with programming supplies and furniture. We also have to pass the fire department. So we do feel that we are very diligent in providing a safe environment for those that we care for.
Thank you, Kristen. Any questions from the commission?
Everybody have a question for Steve?
Okay, thank you, Kristen. You may take a seat. Okay, Commissioner Reynolds,
okay,
please.
Yeah, thank you. Jeff or Ron, they've been operating in West Covina at the other location for 10 years, since 2008. Are we aware of any issues at that location?
No, Commissioner Redholz. I think I remember processing that application in 08, but since that time, when they submitted this application, I have not heard any complaints or concerns from that tenant.
Okay, and just, I'm just looking at the staff report and the conditions, and there are building division requirements that are part of that, so I would assume that this applicant would go through the process as outlined here, which requires inspections and approvals.
That is correct. They'd have to go through the inspection process. They would not be able to occupy the space without a certificate of occupancy.
And that's basically standard operating procedure. I mean, people just can't take over a spot and open up. It's got to be approved and inspected, correct?
Yes.
So nothing different here?
Correct.
It'd be the normal way we operate?
Yes, that's correct. And those are conditions of approval. They're required to operate under that auspices. If they didn't do that, we have the revocation procedure, and that would be an obvious ability to revocate if they didn't have valid permits.
Any additional questions for staff? Any commission discussion on the topic? Okay. Sure. Commissioner Castellanos?
Thank you. We do have, those are good, valid concerns Mr. Grivich raised, but we do have some procedures in place in the city, but also through community care licensing through the Department of Social Services. I know your experience has been negative. I've gone through approvals through community care licensing for an RCFE, and I can tell you that was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done. So if you ever do encounter trouble with community care licensing not doing their part, I do know some people over there and maybe I can assist. But that being said, I think we do have some conditions in place to try to keep everyone safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Castellanos. Willing to entertain a motion?
Ready for the numbers, please.
This is a conditional use permit, so the resolution number will be 18-5963.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval.
Second.
Commissioner Holtz. Commissioner Redholz.
Aye.
Commissioner Hing. Aye. Commissioner Castellanos.
Aye.
Chairman Jimenez.
Yeah, aye, yes.
You seconded it, right?
This is,
You seconded it?
I did the second, yes.
Okay.
This action is final unless appealed to the City Council within 10 days. Thank you. We're going to move on to a couple non-hearing items. As I see staff shift around, we will introduce the next item. This is an item continued from the August 28th Planning Commission meeting, a study session, Code Amendment 1802, as it relates to accessory dwelling units. Accessory dwelling unit revisions. And I see Jeff will be presenting, correct?
All right, I think I'm ready now. This is Code Amendment number 1802. It's a study session, and those of you who were here on August 28th will realize that this is a very, you may feel like you've already been here. We're going to go through pretty much the same presentation just because it was continued from that meeting. The City Council initiated Code Amendment 1802 on June 19th to consider accessory dwelling unit standards for minimum lot size and rear setback. Code Amendment number 1703 was adopted by Council the meeting before that, which addressed several accessory dwelling unit standards. 2 code amendments were completed to address the various bills passed over the last two years for ADUs. Staff is aware that additional bills may pass this calendar year that the city may need to address next calendar year. So we're in a situation where laws keep changing, we keep having to change up with them, or catch up with them. This was, as I said, continued from the August 28th Planning Commission meeting. Code Amendment 1703 revised the standard for minimum lot size. So we're going to talk about 3 items. One's minimum lot size. We'll start with that one. It revised the minimum lot size, reducing it from a sliding scale of 12,000 to 46,000 square feet, depending on the location in the city, to 12,000 square feet throughout the city. Utilizing GIS software, we were able to estimate the number of residential properties in the city and categorize them by lot size. And we did that for the Planning Commission's edification, so they'd have some understanding about lot size and percentage of lots in the city. So rather than read those, I think you can see there's a range from lots that are greater than 7,000 square feet in the city is 79% of the lots fit into that, whereas greater than 12,000 to 25% there's a scale that goes between those. There was some discussion last time about some analysis of issues with parking and utilities. And so obviously we can't do a scientific analysis. This is just a sort of a discussion that we have on the issues that are salient on those points. First of all, large and small lots have different allowed lot sizes. So there's some discussion about large lot sizes, there maybe being no difference between, and if you don't allow ADUs in small lot sizes, that's discriminating against small lot sizes. Well, first of all, large lot, different houses are allowed different sizes on different lots. Large lots require larger side yard setbacks than small lots. So in that sense, you're discriminating against larger lots. The smallest lot size in the city actually has a lesser rear yard setback than the other areas in the city. It's 15 feet where every place else is 25 feet. So I bring those points up just to understand that there already are differences in the city regarding large and small lots. There's a variety of standards that are in place, and that's just simply because there's a different environment that comes into being when you have a large lot as opposed to a small lot, and you're trying to establish that environment and keep it in place. Since this uses persons per unit, which are used to estimate population. So every time they do a census, they have the number of units, they have the number of the people that live in the city, and then the corresponding number is a persons per unit. In 2010, that was 3.34. So generally there are 3.34 persons per unit in each unit in the city. And it's generally assumed that a lot with 2 units will have more population than an equivalent sized house. So the point I'm trying to make there is a 2,500 square foot house with an 800 square foot, well, let's use an easier number. 2,200 square foot house with an 800 square foot ADU is 3,000 square feet. There's likely going to be, based on census and based on statistical analysis, there's likely to be more people on that lot than there would be in an equivalent size 3,000 square foot house, just because they're different units. And units generally are, they're calculated by persons per unit. Increasing the number of persons per lot will generally have impacts on parking. State law prohibits requiring more than one parking space with an ADU. So we are not allowed to require more than one parking space for an ADU, no matter what size the ADU is, no matter how many bedrooms the ADU has. And that parking space is not allowed to be, we can't require it to be covered. It could be covered, it could be uncovered. You just have to have one parking space. And moreover, the state also prohibits requiring any parking within a half mile of a bus stop. So when you have it within a half mile of a bus stop, you're not allowed to require any parking, which is actually most of the city. When we look at the majority of the city is in an area that's close enough to a bus stop that we cannot require parking spaces. So residential developments may require upgrades. So that's the parking discussion. So I'll leave that there. And residential developments, when a residential development is proposed, and it may have a certain number of units, we require a sewer study to determine if the sewer is at capacity and needs to be upgraded. And if it needs to be upgraded, then it'd be required by the new units to upgrade it so that we don't have problems for the rest of that neighborhood. So one of the problems that I see here with the sewer system is when you have incremental ADU development, you can't require a sewer update, and it's incremental, so it's one unit at a time as opposed to a bunch at a time. So those are the issues that I can see. And those are very general and they're shallow. I'm not trying to say that that's a complete analysis, but it is the type of issues that we discuss on a regular basis with neighborhoods and with development. So now the rear setback. So that was a discussion on lot size. Now the rear setback. The R1 zone requires rear yard setback of 25 feet, except in Area District 1A, and I mentioned that earlier, where a 15-foot rear yard setback is required. That's the code now. We're not talking about changing anything. That is the code and has been, I think, for decades. The code allows for an encroachment into the rear yard of 40%, no greater than 15 foot in height, no closer than 5 feet from the rear property line. So a single-family house can ask for an addition that can go up to 5 feet from the rear property line and 15 feet in height, one story, but no more than 40% of the rear yard can be covered. Structures such as single-family houses, additions, and most accessory buildings like garages, workshops, and sheds can be constructed to comply with those standards. Historically, second units have required a 25-foot rear setback. In addition, accessory habitable quarters, which we used to call guest houses, are also required to comply with the 25-foot rear setback. The intent of this standard is to reduce privacy impacts to the neighboring properties that are adjacent to the rear yard. Most of the types of improvements allowed to encroach in the rear setback are non-habitable buildings, which generally do not have the same loss of privacy issues on an adjacent property. The current standards for accessory dwelling units require a 25-foot rear setback. R1 standard, so this is a third issue. I'm sorry, no, this is still on the rear setback. R1 standards allow most structures to be constructed as close as 5 feet from the rear property line, with the exception of accessory habitable quarters, accessory dwelling units, and second stories, which all require a 25-foot rear setback. Options before you tonight include no changes to the rear setback or changing the ADU setback to 5-foot rear setback as required for other improvements. And you know, another option would be somewhere between the 5 and the 25. Lastly, the third issue is the clarification of location standards. Current standards in ADUs combine the allowed location standards for attached and detached ADUs in the rear yard section of the code. So it's labeled, or it's titled as rear yard, and then it goes into some discussion. The location standards require that detached ADUs be located behind the back of the residence, while attached ADUs can be located anywhere in the structure. To clarify this, staff is recommending separating the rear yard standards and location into two sections in the code, one which would cover attached and one which would cover detached. That would make it clear that attached structures don't have to be behind the main house. In addition, staff is recommending including language that the door of the ADU not be located on the front elevation unless there is no other alternative due to topography or some other issue like that. So this conclusion of this presentation tonight for this study session. The purpose of this study session is to provide the Planning Commission with discussion points. Another study session may be scheduled if necessary. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission review the information in the staff report and provide appropriate direction to staff regarding standards to be included in the code amendment. We did receive some comment letters. I've distributed those to you. 2 of them are received for this study session. I did provide you one that was received from last study session simply because Chairman Jimenez wasn't available at that meeting, and so I wanted him to have it and everyone to have that in front of them at the same time. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions from the Commission? Commissioner Redholz?
Yeah, Jeff, based on, at the last meeting, there was a couple of commissioners that were in favor of adjusting the requirements, and there was a couple of us that wanted to kind of keep it the same. If we were to make the restrictions different than what they are now, less than what they are now, basically, just off the top of your head, I'm not looking for a number, an exact number, but how many potential new homes could be added to the city's housing stock? You understand what I'm asking? I mean, yeah, you know, I mean, ADUs that are, I mean, we're talking about 1,200 square feet. Huh? No, I mean, the ADU itself could be 1,200 square feet, which is bigger than a lot of homes.
Me and Ron are conversing here a little bit because we've been doing some analysis for another reason. We think there's about 6,000 houses that are above 12,000 square feet, something in that neighborhood.
So, I mean, I'm sure they're not all going to do it, but that's potentially 6,000 additional homes with, you know, residents and occupying that. And the thing that kind of concerns me is that the state law prohibits requiring a discretionary review process. So we have virtually no say here as a commission or as a city. Is that a correct assumption to make?
That is a correct statement. We do have a process whereby it's basically a plan check process whereby they submit the application, the plans to us, and we review them to make sure that they're correct. But we can't deny them. All we can do is say they're incomplete or that they're complete.
Okay, so just, I mean, this is a study session, not a public hearing, so it's all discussion, if I'm not, okay. So, I mean, if you look at that with the potential, that's a big number, 6,000. Big number, okay? I mean, I don't think we're going to have the support system in place to accommodate even a third of that. You know, I mean, we don't have enough public safety as it is. We don't have the, you know, the infrastructure in place. You know, there's a lot of variables that we have to look at here as we study this. You know, it's a lot more than just changing or, you know, revising a code. There are implications and ramifications that go along with that. You know, I mean, it's just as if you're looking at a normal housing development that would want to come into the city. We would have to give that, you know, quite a bit of scrutiny. And, you know, when you look at the potential number of additional housing that could come with this, we have to look at it the same way and give it the same kind of scrutiny, in my view. And that's what I'm doing. You know, we were talking at the last meeting about 1,200, I think it was, you know, raising the ADU size to 1,200 square feet. You know, that's a house. You know, it's not a little, you know, I mean, I think they call it a granny flat is, you know, is degrading it. You know, I mean, it's a house. And, you know, as Ms. Gillingham mentioned, you know, I mean, you're going to have people moving in there, 1,200 square feet. You could have, you know, another family living there, and, you know, it just goes on and on and on with additional cars, additional parking. I mean, you know, again, I'm going to stick with my original position in that we just, you know, it's not broken. I don't think we need to fix it. And I think if we do go down this path, we're going to be creating a mess. in my view. So, Jeff?
I do try to get this microphone to work. I do want to qualify a statement a little bit. We don't have the exact number of units. That's a bit of a wild guess, and I think as we thought about that a little bit, I think that may be a little high, but it's probably somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000.
Yeah, no, I wasn't looking for, I mean, it's just something that I think we need to consider. You know, if you look at the lot sizes, there's a possibility that there could be, I mean, even if it's, you know, a couple, 2,000. I mean, it doesn't matter. That's a big number. A number that doesn't exist now, that we would have to be able to police and sewer and, you know, everything else that goes along with housing. So that's my comment on it at this point.
Thank you, Commissioner Redholz. Any other commissioners wishing to speak? Commissioner Holtz?
Yeah, excuse me, on page 2, where it gives a percentage of lots and all that, you do have a statement in there that if it remains at 12,000 square feet, is estimated 21% of the residential properties are eligible to construct an ADU. That's a lot of places. That's a lot of places. That's just a lot. I don't know how else to say it. So I just wanted to point that out, that 21% right now are eligible to construct an ADU if you leave it the way it is right now today.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Holtz. Any other commissioners wishing to speak? We do have a few speaker cards, Jeff. Commissioner Castellanos, I see you reaching for your microphone.
I actually like to add something first. Despite the fact that we're discussing about 1,200 square feet ADU right now, but I believe West Covina currently have a guest house that's up to 1,000 square foot. I mean, that's in existence right now. And I believe, I'm not sure about the lot size for the guest house. Is there a lot size? I'm not aware of that.
I'm trying to recall, and my brain just left the room. That was wrong. One thing, that it is 800 square feet. Accessory.
For ADU, it's 800 square foot.
For both. For both, it's 800 square feet. It's the same size.
Currently, right now.
Yeah. It's not larger.
Okay, but prior to the change, was there like 1,000 square foot?
No, 640 was what it used to be.
640,
until
okay.
the state requirement changed, so we raised it. Actually, the guest house may still be, I mean, the accessory habitable quarters, which we used to call guest house, I think maybe it's still 640. I'm sorry, I didn't review that one. I didn't know that was going to be under discussion. But that one is discretionary. It requires an AUP. That one does not have any rules that are dictated to us by the state. So we can choose to do whatever we want with that one. That's the thing there. And my memory is we haven't changed that since we changed the rules for the ADUs last year.
Okay. I just want to add that I'm not sure if, one, we need to address the housing shortage currently, or we need to face it eventually. Even recently in the articles, in the newspaper articles, they're stating that because of what we're doing and restricting more and more, I am not sure if it's good that we continue to restrict and then have state take over the rights to basically have some decisions, because there is I forgot what's his name. I don't know if you remember, the article just came out that the state wanted us to take the rights from the city regarding development. So I really don't have an answer if we're trying to address the issues and being proactive currently, or we wait and the state would take over and we don't do anything to resolve the housing shortage. I mean, I don't have an answer. And more, the states are basically requiring us to come up with, and even as we updated this plan, we already know laws are coming up that's requiring us to make more changes. Even at this current code, and for example, the lot size of 1,200 square feet, majority of the people, due to the setback issues and all that, they're not going to be able to develop. Even I had people who are living in our area that is, 20,000 square foot, and they're still managed to can't put an ADU. And I'm not talking about, the under 1,200 square foot lot size. So surprisingly, 12,000 square foot lot size. So 12,000 square foot, it impacts 25% of the populations in West Covina. And if you look at West Covina, only certain area, majority of the houses has more than 12,000 square foot. I so happen to have lot size around that area. I believe it's 20,000 square foot. And neighbors still were not able to add this 800 ADU due to, I'm not sure what it is, but I mean, it depends on the positions of how you put your house 20, 60 years ago. It depends on how the back lot size is, the hill size, and what have you. So there's a lot of variables. So even with the 6,000 square foot, and on top of that, the biggest variable that we have issues with is money. Even though you want to build, an 800 square foot home, it could easily be, I don't know, 1,500. I mean, 150,000 to 200,000. I mean, that's something that, I don't know about everyone, but I don't have that. Even if I want it, I can't have it. So out of the 6,000 roughly high estimate, we may not be able to even get to that number. I don't know. But I just feel like the more restrictions that we put into it, and we're having a housing shortage. I mean, we can't complain that we're having a lot of homeless in the future, but at the same time, we're not encouraging the development if we can. So I really don't have an answer. So that's my, if we can do something about it currently, and if we can proactively, and it takes a long time. A lot of people don't realize this, but it does take a long time to develop. I mean, just because someone wants an ADU, it could take 2 years, 3 years. It's not like just because you want it, you can just, come up and do it right away. So I'm just saying that, the code has been up to this point, to me, seems very restrictive in a sense that even if the very few people that may want it or have the money to do it may not be able to do it. And I've heard people that 30 years ago, they may want this ADU, but it was not allowed. So they didn't build it, but 30 years now, when they're 92, they're like, well, we can't do anything right now. So that's my input on it, I think.
Thank you. Commissioner Castellanos?
Jeff, do we know what the state might require us to change next year, or no forecast yet?
I don't have a forecast yet. It's a bit like building up to bowl season in football. You can spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's going to happen, but usually it's not worth the resources that it takes to try to figure that out. And I think we will know in the next couple of months what is decided to be passed and what isn't.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll just add to actually what my fellow commissioners said. I agree with Commissioner Redholt and Holtz about everything they said. We do have potentially quite a lot of lots that could be affected by this. And we have all the comments that Ms. Gillingham made, that they're good points, and also letter by Ms. Jerry Patras, who could not attend today. She makes a point that kind of along the lines of what I mentioned last time. Our city's different. Throughout our city, we've got different lots, different street sizes. And to that point, I've been driving around the city a lot, and there's streets that I can't park on. Right? Both sides are full. And also those tend to be the streets that the lots are smaller. And even if we wanted to, I don't think we could drop a home there or an ADU. But there are other streets that are ample and that they're far apart and allow for that a little bit more. And as much as Jeff mentioned, as much as we don't want to discriminate based on lot size or any other factors, we kind of do already based on things that make sense, I think. And so, as Commissioner Hang mentioned, this is a difficult thing to address fairly and to the benefit of the city as a whole. But I think, that's what we're trying to do here. And, on the other hand, we also have Ms. Lee, who's been here often and advocating for solutions, and that just proves the point of the fact that our city's different. And like Jeff said, sewer systems, you know, even with the limitations of, you know, if there's a bus stop close by, we can't mandate parking spot. All these factors make the decision really tough. Well, and I think that's why we're here doing this. You know, and I don't know the magic solution, but based on the driving I've been doing since last time, and also I've been doing aerial views of different neighborhoods and looking at the square footage and trying to see what realistically could fit. And also the article that Ms. Patras provided here, I guess was in the Tribune. It references problems and disputes that have occurred due to proximity to the neighbor or neighbors. And, you know, so it is a tough situation. And well, I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of the comments from the community before we keep deciding on what to do next.
Thank you. Commissioner Holtz?
Well, I've been on the commission quite a few years, and I can't remember that there's a lot of people that have come forward requesting these. Do you have any idea how many, let's say in the last 5 years or whatever, have requested ADUs? I mean,
Well, we know, because we were looking recently, that there's been 7 submitted so far this year, and that's by far the largest number we've had.
Yeah.
Although it was, to be fair about it, the way that the minimum lot size was structured before, and even it was even worse at one time before that, it didn't allow a lot of lots to have second units. So we don't have very many.
Yeah. That's what I thought. Okay. Okay, thank you.
But let me ask you this, Jeff. Prior to last year, was there an ADU ordinance for the entire city of West Covina?
Yes. There's been a second unit ordinance since, I think, 1990 or something like that, when the state invented it and required it. This has been an ongoing evolution. So yes, we've had an ordinance in place for a long time, more than 20 years. But it has evolved. It's been very different. It's very different now than it was 5 years ago, which is very different than it was before that as well. If I could add, I was able to quickly look at the accessory habitable quarters, which we call guest houses. So yes, there is no minimum lot size for those. They do require a garage, so you can't construct them without a garage, and they are limited to 640 square feet.
And just to be clear, Jeff, that is not on the table this evening. What you're asking us to do is specific to ADUs. One, provide direction on minimum lot size as they relate to ADUs, and address the setback issue related to ADUs, if I'm understanding this
That is correct.
correctly. Okay. Just want to clarify that. And actually, that's what we were going to do. So just some administrative items I would like to just get out of the way. We do have a couple. One's a letter and email from Jerry Potras. I believe, Jeff, you mentioned previously that one of the two was from the previous Planning Commission meeting that stated August 28th, where Ms. Potras talks a little bit about her concerns regarding a one-size-fits-all approach to the setbacks, and then a follow-up discussion, which was discussed a bit by Commissioner Castellanos. Also, we have a letter from Arturo Gonzalez, who's a West Covina resident at 1414 Eckerman, concerns with decreasing the minimum rear yard setbacks from 25 to 5 feet and increasing the allowable size of dwelling units from 800 to 1,200 square feet. It generally talks about him being a little bit concerned. Alarming, I think, is the word that he uses in his letter as it relates to that. I have 3 speaker cards from Tom Chang, Jamie Lee, and Brian Tabadia. I apologize if I mispronounce that last name. For or against, I'm just assuming it's just public testimony, so I'm just going to rotate them in.
Jim Grivich did too.
Yeah, I have cards from Jim Grivich and Marietta. Those are against. And so I just wanted to clarify with these 3 cards, we have no entries for or against. Not that it matters.
It's not a public hearing. Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify, that's all. That's
It's not clear what you'd be for or what you'd be.
fair enough. What we'll do, we'll just rotate everyone in alphabetical order. And so let's get started. Tom Chang, you're up.
Good evening, Commissioner
My name is Tom Chang, and I'm a resident of West Covina. First, like to address some of the points that were made recently. And, you know, these are all speculation. I know we talked about the 25% and, you know, equating to about 4,000, 6,000 homes. But again, how many of those have actually come forth and actually built ADUs? So it's very limited right now, more than likely. So you can't assume that, you know, out of the 4,000 to 6,000 homes, you know, 100% or even 50% are going to build ADUs. That's the first assumption. The second one, you know, just to address Commissioner Castellanos, you know, the parking situation where you were driving around and you notice a lot of cars parked on, you know, surface streets where there's, you know, smaller lots. And I think, you know, going back to the June 5th council meeting, Councilman Wu, you know, addressed that, you know, he's a realtor and he sees this all the time where people pack their, you know, garages full of stuff and they don't really park in their garage. So that can be attributed to the cars on the street. So, you know, that's a different issue right there. So just want to point that out first. And, you know, I'm here today to oppose these restrictive requirements on detached ADUs, such as, you know, the 12,000-foot minimum lot size, these rear setbacks of 25 feet, side setbacks of 10 feet. I know it's not on the table, but, you know, I'd like to see that the maximum ADU size also be increased from 800 to 1,200 feet, you know. As Commissioner Castellanos mentioned in the last meeting, you know, we want to get the best bang for our buck, you know, and it's a more comfortable living space if we're housing, you know, family members, elderly parents, etc. And, you know, the demographics of West Covina have changed over the years and are continuing to change. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the population of West Covina has grown to over 100,000 residents with over 30,000 households in 2017. And in looking at the ethnic makeup of the community, over 80% of the population are minorities, mainly comprising of Hispanics and Asians, as we all know. And this is evident with the current commission panel as well, you know, where the majority is the minority group right now. And Commissioner Ritholtz, you mentioned at the August 28th meeting that the Planning Commission has to look at our own residents' needs in this city and make decisions based on our city and what we feel is best. My question to the staff and panel is, are the residents' needs really being looked at enough? With these study sessions, I know we do a lot of talking, but have you guys conducted, you know, field tests and or surveys with residents to see how they actually really feel about ADUs and the restrictions set forth by the commission? And I know clearly Ms. Lee has come forward on numerous occasions to these meetings to, you know, plead her case because of family or other concerns. And I'm sure there are many other residents out there that are in a similar predicament. But, you know, to address your point, you know, most of them probably don't know about ADU laws. Secondly, a lot of them, since the demographics is, you know, primarily Hispanic or Asian, they probably don't have or they're limited by language barriers and in voicing their concerns at these types of forums. So that's why you probably don't see a lot of them here. And they probably don't even know where to begin with ADUs. And, you know, I like to highlight some of the benefits of ADUs. I know Ms. Lee has listed a variety of benefits in the past meetings. You know, the biggest one to me is the social impact that it has. You know, with the soaring cost of living in California, we have to look towards the future, and multi-generational families and households are the wave of the future. Affordability has become an issue for most families in California, so ADUs become a more affordable housing option for many low to moderate income residents. Taking this right away from them will not solve the potential issues you all mentioned at the last meeting with parking, utilities, etc. Multiple families will continue to live together as they can't afford to rent their own property. And due to the overcrowding in these households, they'll become desperate and illegally put up walls and build new structures, etc., that are not to code, further posing fire and safety hazards to the city. And I recently looked at a property on the outskirts of South Hills where this was the case. 3 families were living in a single family residence. And to Ms. Lee's point at the last meeting, putting up walls and extending the property only further deteriorate the charm and feel of the property. Sorry.
Jim Grivich.
Jim Grivich, I'm here to speak to keep the existing restrictions in place. Several of the issues have already been raised, but I'd like to emphasize one of them, and that's parking. If you lower the square footage requirement in housing, you'll end up with literally situations where people will not have a place to park anywhere in their neighborhood because there'll be so many people living there. Already on a street next to mine, the name of it's Larkwood, I personally did an inventory of the whole street. The average number of cars parked at each home was 4, each house. That essentially meant there were already 4 adults living in these houses. The average square footage of these houses is about 1,200 to 1,400 square feet. The average lots were roughly 10,000 square feet. And there was already at least 4 adults living in them. There was no place to park now. The people used the garage usually for somebody to live in. They filled up the driveway with cars. The street was filled with cars. There was no place to park. And I've seen people trolling on that street just for a place to park. You looked at Dario, a wider range of the city. That's the case in a large number of places, but I did the whole street just to see what the statistics would be. And by the way, the state law appears to me not to be about accommodating people for housing. I'm sorry. When they put in restrictors, like say you can't require a parking space if you're within 500 square feet of a bus stop, a half a mile of a bus stop, that's social engineering. That's not about trying to accommodate. They want to force people out of their cars and make them take the bus. There's all kinds of things that the state is doing now to do that. It's not working. People refused because everybody wants a car. They don't want to take the bus. But they're still trying to force the issue. And then also they're forcing the issue by saying if you have more hardscape, in other words, if you build another roof, we're going to tax you double. They're saying you shouldn't build anything because we're going to tax it because it makes it hardscape instead of plain dirt. And then they say you can't use any water. I was really disappointed in the staff analysis on the water restrictions. We are going to have to reduce our water usage, yet we're simultaneously encourage more people to live in the same place with less water. That doesn't make any sense. There was mention made of sewers will be overcapacitated, but no mention was made of water. Every person you add will mean less water for everybody because the water companies will be forced to provide less water. The whole thing just doesn't make any sense. The same people that are advocating more housing are also advocating less of everything else. I really don't think we should accommodate the state people. What I think we should do is fight them. I think they're just wrong-headed. And if they really wanted to do housing, there's lots of empty land in the state of California. I've walked it. I walked the whole state. That's one of the things I did in my life. Most of the land is empty. So we can build there. But there's all kinds of quote-unquote environmental rules. No, we can't build there. If we really wanted to accommodate housing, that's what we'd do. So I'm absolutely opposed to trying to increasing the density of the city. I moved here because it was suburban. I did not want to live in downtown Los Angeles, and that's what the folks are trying to do to this place, make it like downtown. Have you ever tried to navigate downtown or find a place to park in many neighborhoods? It's all parking by permit only. You can't. It's really hard. Google Maps routes me a different way every time I want to go somewhere because all the roads are full of cars because there's too many people. Anyway, I hope I made my point. Please don't make it any more accommodating to more housing than we already have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grivich. Jamie Lee.
Jeff, do you think can it be expanded a little bit larger on the screen? Or is that it? No? Okay, no problem. It's okay. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Jamie Lee, and I am a resident of West Covina. And I've been here a few times, so this time I prepared a chart so that maybe we can all see what the actual impact is of what I know everyone believes is good intentions when they think about how they want to plan how they want our West Covina ADU laws to be. So I know that there was some discussion about keeping things the way that they are, which the City Council on June, I think, they actually asked for this to be reevaluated again because they don't believe that it is okay the way that it is. So that's why we have these study sessions. So I just wanted to quickly point out from this ADU law, I'm limited on time, but let's look at if we don't do anything. If we don't do anything, West Covina law, the way that it stands right now, we're basically saying if you don't have 12,000 square feet, you cannot build new. You must use an existing space. In other words, everybody who has 12,000 square feet or smaller cannot build new, and they must use their existing space. This means converting garages, workshops, as well as, you can put a wall in your house, build a second kitchen in your house, converting your home to a duplex. That's what we are encouraging with the current law. So we're saying the cheapest method, which is a conversion, is the easiest method because there is no minimum lot size, there is no rear setback, there is no side setback. It's basically whatever your primary home is. So this is what we are encouraging right now if we do nothing. I have some concerns about this because I love West Covina. There's a reason why I came here to try. I rooted my family here. I've been waiting to try to build an ADU for many years. Actually, I've already had 2 kids in this process. And I'm not even counted in Jeff's statistics because I made one phone call 2 years ago saying I'd like to build an ADU, and I didn't meet 20,400 square foot minimum lot size, and that was the end of it. So I wasn't even tallied in anything. And there probably are a ton of people that fit that criteria, where they didn't meet the minimum lot size. So now we're setting an arbitrary lot size of 12,000, and we're saying that, okay, if the concerns that people have regarding parking, utilities, etc., if studies have shown that, in fact, those are not impactful, and I can present the references, but if you still believe that those negative impacts will still happen, they will still happen because people are now forced to, people can still have ADUs. They can use their existing space as an ADU. So the impact of those, in actuality, the parking and such, studies have shown, it's not due to ADUs, it's less than 1%. It's due to people not parking in their car. It's due to what Jeff had said, 3.34 per unit. That means currently every primary home is exceeding their 2-car garage. That's why they're parking outside by 1.34. That's what you see parked on the side. If we're concerned about parking, we should put in maybe overnight permit required to park overnight or something, if that's truly what we want to address. But ADUs are being blamed for parking when in fact studies have shown they don't quantify that amount, less than 1%. But all I'm saying is if you think parking is an issue, parking will be an issue because you have encouraged people to convert their existing space. There will be no new build. And for people who can build new, 12,000 square feet seems great, but it's actually not. By the time you look at what the minimum setback is, if you want a detached ADU but you don't have 25 feet, then you must attach it to your ADU. What does that mean? That means we promote people to build duplexes in West Covina. That's what the law is currently. I value my property and the aesthetics of my property. My property value is dependent on the aesthetics of my property. And converting my home to a duplex by attaching an ADU, that's not the way that we are going to preserve the charm of West Covina. A charming home to me, and not only to me, realtors can tell you a detached guest house is far more attractive and holds more property value than a duplex. But your current rules promote an existing space, a conversion, or if you can build new with 12,000 square feet, but you don't meet this rear setback of 25, you will be attaching it and converting your home to a duplex. Lastly, all I'm saying is, in the detached ADU, even if you take away people's right to build a detached ADU, then these people will attach it or they will convert their existing space. This is what, removing this incentive for people to build brand new doesn't prevent your issues. 25 feet doesn't make sense because most people follow a logic of following the primary home. These setbacks of 25 10 feet, they should follow your primary home. And 800 to 1,200 square feet, I'm asking for it to be increased to 400 more to the maximum because not everybody will build. And the people that can build should be allowed to build. Thank you.
Marietta Pallone? Sorry about that.
That's okay. You got close. Good evening. My husband Joey and I have lived in West Covina for over 24 years now. It was in 2014 that the Planning Commission and many West Covina residents and the City Council spent a great deal of time and effort amending and clarifying the codes for accessory second dwelling units, better known as granny or back houses. At that time, our Planning Department study found many shades of gray in the state and county laws and guidelines. They researched the surrounding cities and proposed many amendments for second dwelling units built in West Covina. Our City Council then approved them. A fair compromise was made, and the Residents' Planning Commission and the City Council worked well together. Today, we find ourselves unfortunately here again. It is my understanding that our governor has passed new requirements, but from what I have read, it is just as unclear as it was in 2014. Most of the information I found online pertains to Northern California, the Bay Area specifically, where we are aware of the exaggerated home prices that are causing a housing shortage. But we often find Northern California and Southern California are very different places with very different needs, problems, and solutions. The information I did find was clear that jurisdictions could impose and establish their own lower limits on height, setbacks, lot coverage, including setting requirements based on the main house square footage, landscaping, architectural views, regulate being used as rentals, and additional parking. Without being able to clearly find exactly what the governor has changed, but stating each jurisdiction can impose their own guidelines, it seems to me that the city of West Covina has been there and done that. I understand we must follow municipal code, but our city still has the power to not overcrowd homeowners' lots, loss of neighbors' privacy and views, not enough parking on our quiet city streets, future problems with our sewer system, and much more. In 2014, our study reviewed the surrounding cities' policies. West Covina at that time was lacking in clear, understandable guidelines. We found that then an ADU you could have built in West Covina would not have been allowed in Baldwin Park, Walnut, Azusa, Covina, or San Dimas. I do not see anything mentioned in this code document on this study about those areas and the changes they might have made in the last few years. I ask if they were included in this study or if they're in another document I have not seen. You may feel that changing the setbacks a few feet make no difference to the neighboring homeowners. That would be untrue. I show you two photos I took today. This is a tough shed, okay? It was a tough shed accessory unit built for a mother to live in that brought us to the 2014 guidelines. It's on under 12,000 square foot lot. This structure affects the views of 5 neighboring homes. The person that built that has a much nicer view of the dwelling than the rest of us do. And I'm sure if you let her push it back another foot or two, she would have liked it even more. But to the rest of us, this dwelling feels like it is toppling over into our yards. Letting the setbacks be even less would make that more worse for the surrounding us. And it's not just that, it's their noise, and our privacy would be affected even more. In addition, they would not be able to landscape. They couldn't if the setbacks are lessened. You could see that in the photo. They didn't have enough room to add bushes across. West Covina would start to look like a concrete jungle. 6-foot walls around high stucco concrete surfaces, 2 homes on a lot. This other photo was a home on Vine Street. Who knows when this dwelling was built? The realtor told me they did not have permit copies and that it was grandfathered in so it could not be removed. This is what it looks like when not adequate setbacks are set. This wall leans over onto the sidewalk because it was built so poorly. It is an eyesore to our street, but from the homeowner's perspective, it looks great because it's far away from her home. It is the neighbors that have to deal with this horrible view of a fortress. I respectfully urge you not to act in haste and examine how our surrounding cities are interpreting the governor's changes, especially those we found that ban second dwelling units completely. We are not the Bay Area. We are the city of beautiful homes, so let's keep it this way. Ms. Heng, I appreciate you talking about that expensive home and the view that it would obstruct for the surrounding people for the mountain view. Well, we might not have a mountain view when we have less expensive homes, but your argument is exactly the same for us. This affects our view, our property. I might not see the valley, but I could see trees. I no longer could see them. I could no longer see trees with the concrete wall. I can't even walk my dog on this corner. I had to walk on the street. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a last card here from Brian. And I'm not going to try to pronounce the last name. I sincerely apologize.
That's the only name they screwed up at high school graduation, so it's okay.
Thank you.
My name is Brian Tabatabai, and I am a resident of West Covina District 1. I would first like to thank Ms. Jamie Lee for her tireless work in bringing the issue of ADU regulations to the Commission and creating the dialogue which has led to a possible modernization of our current regulations to bring West Covina in line with the wants of thousands of homeowners throughout Southern California. I am also here to express my disappointment in the manner in which this body spoke with Ms. Lee at the August 28th meeting. After Ms. Lee's statement, she was called back. You have been up here before, haven't you? The resolution we gave you before was if you attach the accessory dwelling unit to your home, you could meet the requirements, and you just don't want to do that. So you want us to change everything in the code to accommodate you. Why won't you attach it to your home, which is allowed, and then you can have all the square footage that you want? Is it this Commission's intention to bully the citizens of West Covina? Is it not our right to speak at these Commission meetings, to give our input, to expect that when we speak, that we also represent the wants of others in the community who cannot attend? Ms. Lee speaks not only for herself, but many of us who are looking for equitable regulations. If we dissect Don's statements, it is clear that the Commission has no issue with privacy, no issue with lot size, no issues with creating duplexes. Instead, the Commission is attempting to skirt California law and create requirements that do not allow us for us to build separate accessory dwelling units. I would ask the Commission to explain the logic of allowing for the creation of an attached duplex, but denying most of the community a separate ADU. The reality is, this Commission, these restrictions are to deny us the building of these separate ADUs. For some of the comments that were made, if you want to talk about social engineering, this is social engineering. I own my land. Those 18,000 square feet I own, that is my land. I bought that home with the intention of building my mom the proper house for her so she could be with me until the day she passes. For a child to take in their parents, to house them, to support them is the highest honor in my culture. To place them in a home is shameful. Shameful in our culture. It is an expectation. We understand. We embrace it. I had the pleasure of being raised with my grandmother in my home. Many nights were spent listening to our families, eating ancient recipes, having someone who loved me waiting for me as both my parents worked. It is now my time to do the same. Okay? This is a place where she could live with us, where we could care for her, where she could pass on our family legacies to my son. Okay? Separate ADU is an opportunity to keep families together, to keep our village from falling apart. So she can have the dignity of her own space, which she has enjoyed her entire life. Okay? This is something I think, some in this community, because they've been here for 20, 30 years, for some reason feel that their right to say something holds more weight than my right. I may have just moved here 2 years ago, but this is my community. I'm raising my son in this community. I'm going to be here for the next 40 years. Okay? Those of us speaking tonight, we may not be the Jerry Portraces, okay, but we're activated. We vote. Okay, we are going to be the future council members. We are going to be the future commission members. This city can no longer ignore us. We have a say. We have our districts. We have our voice. We're providing the energy. We're going to push the city of West Covina into the 21st century. Okay? This place is changing. You know, I know people are talking about parking. Okay? I have a 20-year-old niece. She doesn't know how to drive. She Ubers everywhere. I have a 22-year-old sister-in-law. She doesn't drive. She Ubers everywhere. The world that existed no longer exists. And I understand that these ideas of social engineering, it's not social engineering. It's the reality. This world is different. Now, if you want to hold on to a time that no longer exists, well, I'm sorry. But this time is now. And now this community has changed. And we are changing it. And we're going to continue to change it. And I'd like to say, once again, thank you to Jamie for standing alone. But we're here with you.
Thank you, Brian, for your comments. That represents the last speaker card I have on this item. Anyone else, any other members of the public wishing to speak on this topic? Okay, let the record reflect we have no additional speaker cards, and we will bring public testimony on this discussion to an end. Okay, let's take it back. Jeff, anything you would like to add, or should we start talking a little bit back and forth here regarding?
I would just add, there's some confusion on utilities. We don't have all the information on utilities. We have information on the sewer, but water, electric, gas, we don't have access to that. That's not a city function. So that's not to say that there might not be issues. We have no idea how to address those. So that's why they weren't covered. And that's in the, I believe that was covered in the staff report why we covered sewer.
Okay. So I guess as part of the punishment for not being here at last meeting, maybe I can go on ahead and I guess just to quickly lead off. And first, I think it's very important to address everyone in the public and the importance both of our longtime residents as well as our newcomers to the city, the importance of this topic, how it impacts the city. We hope positively, but we also respect and understand that there may be an opportunity to negatively impact it. I think what this commission is tasked with doing in this particular case is trying to balance and try to reconcile really it's state law, right? State law came down saying you have to comply with a certain set of requirements, and then how do we synthesize that into a code amendment that meets the intent and the needs really of our residents? And we've heard both sides. Points are well taken. I think it's very important to consider. I think what staff is asking of this commission, though, is to look at certain development standards moving forward to allow for these ADUs. And I'm one to believe that we do need to allow a process. I'm not going to get into the social engineering because I believe this is more of a regional housing needs assessment requirement that came down from the state. The state of California said, hey, in order to try to generate more housing, probably the ADU ordinance is the best way we're going to be able to generate housing stock. Obviously regional, when you look at the hypersensitive areas in the Silicon Valley, for example, maybe these ordinances make perfect sense because of the availability of land. San Jose land values, for example, a home there is in the millions of dollars just because of its location to Silicon Valley, the Apple campus, among others. So it makes perfect sense there, but I think what we need to go back here, again, in my opinion, is this balancing act, reconciling the state law, and then meeting the needs of our residents to cut a path forward. So I did analyze the record. I do believe, in my personal opinion, that we do need a minimum lot size. I cannot, as much as I would love to benefit from the ADU ordinance, I live on a property that's under 12,000 square feet, and I would love to have an ADU on my property. But at the same time, I respect that maybe my property is not necessarily conducive to that level of activity because of pre-existing conditions. I cannot afford to maybe move out and buy a lot that's 12,000 plus square feet. But given that, I think the idea behind the lot size requirement really is to say, hey, look, if you have at minimum this level of pad, then you can potentially accommodate an accessory dwelling unit on your property. So that's the first threshold for being able to do an ADU. So I do believe that we have to do a minimum lot size. You know, this whole issue with the setback, moving on, I'm not terribly convinced on modifying it. I think as the way I read the code, the 25-foot setback requirement is to provide a certain level of privacy. I think that's the intent that we're trying to provide here. Yes, the code does talk about reducing it when you attach it to a residence, and I believe the discussion was that it allows for a duplex. I will agree that that's probably true. It maybe allows for what I would rather say as a de facto duplex, in that it's encouraging you to keep the unit closer to the single-family residence. That is, that you have more of a communal approach versus me living here and my parents, whoever it is, out further in the back of the property. So I do believe that we need to have some level of a setback, and it has to be something consistent. I'm all about consistency, so I'm not sure that the record, in my opinion, would support anything less than 25 feet. I mean, in essence, the notes I have here, we're trying to do a lot on parcels if we go below the 12,000 square feet. In essence, we're asking to squeeze about 20 pounds of potatoes in a 4-pound sack if we were to drop the lot size requirements. So we're trying to do a lot. Parking, et cetera. I'm one that has cars, but I also enjoy riding a bike. So I do go around town on my bike and try to forego my vehicle whenever I can. So I'm part of that social experiment from time to time. But I also, again, respect the fact that we need to provide some level of access for our vehicles. So those are my two positions I've stated so far. Again, I am in support of a minimum lot size requirement. And again, I can't say that I'm convinced otherwise right now in reducing the rear yard setback. And again, that's my position. Time will change in the future. Maybe something may become available, some alternative modes or thought processes for transportation that maybe we can revisit in the future. But tonight we're just asking to give staff the direction, hey, this is how we want to move. Maybe even between now and when we look at an ordinance, maybe additional information is presented. But then too, in the future, there's nothing to say we cannot modify this if some new information that was not necessarily purview to us at the time of the decision, can be made. So that's my position here. I'm more than happy to entertain any other comments, questions, or direction from the rest of the commission here. Commissioner Redholz?
Yeah, thank you. Let me just make a couple of comments in response to the comments that were made at the microphone. I believe the first speaker indicated that, or implied that, either the city or the commission has not done its due diligence in finding out what the community has to say about this. Well, if you look back over the last couple of years at the agendas for this planning commission, you will see that the topics of ADU has been on a lot of these agendas. This is like a third or fourth in a row that we have had ADUs on our agenda. Last time I looked, these meetings are open to the public. Like tonight, it's open to the public. If the huge number of people that he implied are interested in this, want to be heard on this item, they have to come here and be heard. They can walk into this chamber like they did, fill out a card, and be heard. They've got their 5 minutes. Bring the family, 5 minutes apiece, come on up, talk to us. That's what we're here to do. We're here to listen. And that's how you're heard. I don't know, I guess we should survey them. Really? That's why we have open public meetings, to be heard. And the idea that there's a language issue. Well, if they were able to manage to purchase property and purchase a home, they ought to be able to somehow find the ability to come down here with perhaps an interpreter or a friend or someone and have their opinions be heard. I'm just not going to make wholesale changes. It's kind of like we're looking for a solution for which there is no problem. This thing has been, we have talked about this ad nauseum almost. Again, we have it on our agenda tonight. I don't know how many people have applied to do a de facto duplex or an attached ADU. I don't have that number, but I can tell you I was on this commission for years before. I've been back on it for more years, and you know, trying to rack my brain as to how many people have come up to this microphone wanting to make the kind of changes to their house and their property that's being discussed. There ain't very many. It's a handful. It's not an issue that I think requires a wholesale change, not only to the code, but a wholesale change to what West Covina is and what it looks like and why people moved here. You know, we have Ms. Lee, who's been up here many times, and that's fine. She has every right to come up and speak and be heard. And no one says, "Hey, you can't speak." I mean, I kind of resent Commissioner Holtz was expressing his opinion too, and he was very, I think, respectful. He said, "You've been here before." Well, you know, you can have your opinion, I can have my opinion. That's the way the world works, right? Okay. And I'm speaking now. Thank you. So, you know, and she spoke to the city council, which is also her right to do that too. And, you know, when all is said and done, we're going to make a recommendation of some sort. It'll go to the city council. City council is going to do what they're going to do. Okay? But, you know, as I sit here, you know, the gentleman made the point that, you know, we're part of the past. We're living in the past. And the future's coming. And get out of the way because we're coming. Okay, that's all good. And he's right. The future's coming, whether we like it or not. But you know what? We got to go day by day by day. And as a commission, as a commissioner, I'm looking at right now. What's in front of me right now? What is my decision to make right now, based on the information in front of me, based on the direction I think we need to go right now? You know, 20, 30, 40 years when, you know, there's other people sitting here probably will most likely be dead in 40, 50 years. Maybe not. Maybe they'll come up with a new drug or something and we'll all still be sitting here and irritate people continually. But I've got to look at the here and now and what I think is the best for this city right now. And I don't, the issue that really hits home, and we talked about it, is parking. Taking it back to the nuts and bolts. It's true, you know, a lot of people don't use their garage for its intended purpose. The idea in West Covina is you have a two-car garage, you can keep 4 cars off the street if you did it right. You put 2 in the garage, you put 2 on the driveway. That's 4 cars. You don't have any on the street. That's what they're supposed to do, but a lot of people don't do that. They convert the garage, they use it as a warehouse, you know, they do whatever they do other than park cars in it. Okay, gee, it'd be nice if we could go knock on every door. What are you doing with your garage? How come you don't have 4 cars? What are they doing? Well, you know, can't do that. But as Commissioner Castellanos alluded to in his remarks a little while back, as you drive around this city, there's an issue with parked cars on the street. And again, if you're going to add, okay, 6,000 is a big number. Okay, how about 500? How about 1,000? You know, what number do you want to pick out of the air? It's fine. But still, you're going to have an impact to neighborhoods. You're going to have an impact to the way West Covina is. And in light of the fact that, as my friend Commissioner Holtz has said, you know, we basically have, as many times as I can count, we had just one individual who has an issue. She has a couple of people that are in support of her tonight, and that's fine. That's good. But, you know, I am not going to make wholesale changes to a municipal code when it doesn't have to be that made. So I'm standing firm.
Thank you, Commissioner Redholz. Any other commissioners wishing to speak? Commissioner Holtz?
Let me first start by saying I meant no disrespect to Ms. Jamie Lee at that last meeting. I was just trying to ascertain from her, because I know she's been before us a couple of times, and made a plea that she wanted to have her, I believe it was her grandmother, living there, and was very concerned because she was getting elderly. And I merely wanted to ascertain that my thinking that if she would attach what she wanted to her house, and she could have double walled it if it was a noise situation, if that would have met her requirements. And she's not willing to do that. She wants it her way, and she wants us to change the code. So I meant no disrespect when I asked you that question. I was trying to ascertain the facts. And I think that's still true. If you would attach to your house, you could get what you want, other than you wouldn't have the separation between the two houses. And then talking about notifying people. And like I said, I've been on this commission many years, and I asked the staff, how many requests do we have for this? And it's very few. It's really very few. And if you're saying people don't know, here's the San Gabriel Tribune. That's a pretty big headline that was in the local news. City to consider granny flat changes. And it spells it all out in here, what they're asking to do, what we're trying to do. How many people do we have here talking about it? Not very many. I can't really see a reason for a change at this point in time, because we don't really know what the state's going to demand here in the near future, either this year or next year. So why would we go ahead and make changes of things that seem to be working when we don't know what's coming down the road? If we see certain changes are going to be required of us, then we can tweak this thing. But why are we going to try to second guess them as to what we need to tweak? I don't understand that. And the gentleman that spoke, you even stated yourself, you've got an 18,000 square foot lot. So if you want to put an ADU on it, you meet that certain requirement. Okay? I don't know what your design is or anything, but seems like you meet that requirement. We're not having a discussion here. I'm not having a discussion with you. Okay? Hey, when you talked, I shut up.
Yeah.
You'd please do the same. So my feeling is, why do we need to change something that seems to be working? So for my seat, I want to leave it the way it is.
Okay. Commissioner Castellanos?
I won't make it too long. I know we've been here a while, and I don't want to beat a dead horse with a stick, but I agree with a lot of what everyone has said in the room today, and I'll make a recommendation kind of continuing based on my research I've done since last time and everyone's comments today. What I would be comfortable with is on 12,000 square foot lot and above, I would be comfortable with a 1,200 square foot ADU. On 11,000 square foot lot and above, I would be comfortable with 800, based on the problems I've seen in the neighborhoods of less than 11,000 square foot averages. I don't think I could see that being feasible. So under 11,000 square feet, I'm not comfortable impacting those neighborhoods. And the other, well, as Jeff said, I mean, the sewer capacity is a factor. As I said, there's a lot of variables to parking issues. And also based on the fact that the council sent it back to us for review and to consider other changes, that's what I would be comfortable with, sending back to the council to, because I think that was the intent, was for us to consider some possible changes. So that's where I'm at.
Would you like to add anything else, Commissioner Hain? So I think to be, sure, Commissioner Holtz.
On the parking issue, I just wanted to remind people, it was a couple of years ago, because of the parking situation, that we talked about, City Council and we talked about having restricted parking and permit parking and all those things to reduce the the parking on the street, because as you know, people live in garages and they've got it full and are using the street, and there's multiple people living in a home. I thought we were going to have a riot down here. I really did. Everybody was against any kind of restrictions and all that. So knowing that, it's going to compound this thing if we do this. So I just wanted to remind people of what the people of the city did not want, any kind of restricted parking or limited parking on the streets.
Thank you, Commissioner Holtz.
I actually going to say something. Jeff, can you bring up that chart again?
The lot size?
The
lot size one?
This one? If you're looking at the West Covina law currently with the attached ADU, for the rear setback, currently, if you were to have an attached, it's 5 feet. So I'm recommending that it's 25 feet. It's for detached. We already have a 10 feet already, and I'm thinking compromising perhaps to 15 feet. So that's our recommendations.
I guess maybe to help you out, Jeff, let me see if I can quarterback this. I think, one, you need direction on the minimum lot size, the first, correct? So our options, and again, I'm just going to go quickly through the report, is for a recommendation that include any lot size above, or recommending that no minimum lot size be established. So it could be 0 or any number in between, really up to 46 or even above. So I think you need direction. Do we want to, 1, leave it as it is, 2, provide some alternative number? And I think that's what you're looking for, Ms. Jeff? Okay.
And I know this is a difficult one. It may be easiest, just because there's 3 items, remember, it may just be easy to take each one individually and see where you are at the end, because you're not, just so everyone knows, this is a study session. They're not approving anything tonight. All they're doing is giving us direction to go draft something, which we bring back here to a public hearing and they discuss it again. And then it goes to council and it's a public hearing and they discuss it again. So this is only the first of at least 3 steps. So that's what you would do. So perhaps it would be good to have a motion and second and just a voice vote. Make sure you know if there's a majority in favor of that motion. And then we'll go to item 2 and then 3.
Someone interested in providing really a motion? I believe either one, we could leave it alone. Minimum lot size, we could leave it alone.
All right.
Laissez-faire, leave it alone. Or provide some number in between.
Provide a number.
Yeah.
Motion to leave it as is.
So we have a motion to leave it as is by Commissioner Holtz.
I'll second.
And a second by Red Holtz, okay. Do we do roll? I think just to be fair, maybe a roll call just to move quickly.
Okay. Commissioner Holtz?
Yes.
Commissioner Redholz?
Aye.
Commissioner Hing?
Aye.
Commissioner Castellanos?
No.
Chairman Jimenez?
Yes.
So that's 4-1. So we have that one.
So you got direction there. The second one is the setback issue.
Rear setback, yes.
Yes, so the rear setback, leave it alone again. Could be one motion, or we can entertain some number in between.
5 and 25.
10. Okay,
yes.
so I heard Commissioner Hing, I believe to be fair, you recommended some alternative number, correct? Okay. Would you like to entertain that or ask for a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for 15 feet.
So the recommendation by Commissioner Hing is for a 15-foot rear yard setback. We have a first. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Castellanos.
Commissioner Holtz?
No.
Commissioner Redholz?
No.
Commissioner Hing?
Yes.
Commissioner Castellanos?
Yes.
Chairman Jimenez?
No.
So then you want to have an alternative motion.
So do we have an alternative motion?
I make a motion to leave it as it is until we hear further from the state.
Second.
Commissioner Holtz? Aye. Commissioner Redholz?
Aye.
Commissioner Hing?
Aye.
Commissioner Castellanos?
Aye.
Chairman Jimenez?
Aye.
Okay. The third one is much less, you may have already forgot about it. It has to do with the location standards and making sure it's clear that if you have an ADU, it doesn't have to, attached ADU, it does not have to be behind the main house. It could be beside it, it can be within the walls of the house. It's just a clarification thing. It's not really an issue here. It's not something that was brought up or sent back to, but I think it's a good clarification so that if someone does want to do an ADU that's attached, that they have an easier path to get there without any confusion.
Can I ask you a question? Is there any restriction at all? Can they put it in front of the house?
If it's attached, then it's part of the house, so it could be anywhere in that house. It could be on the second floor. It could be behind, it could be at the back of the house. It could be at the side of the house.
But it has to be attached.
It had to be attached.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
I believe the idea, and Jeff, you could edit me if I'm incorrect, is that it would be integrated as part of the unit. May be internally accessible, may have an exterior door, but it's part of the overall design of the home.
And with it, we would put a standard that a door should not be on the front elevation. So the access would have to be in the back, the side of the rear.
Right. Okay.
Wait, I'm sorry, I still don't understand.
No, folks, let's be fair to everyone here. Okay, Jeff, would you like to just clarify again? Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, this is a complicated issue. Understand that this isn't something that the city, this is something that's been required of the city. To allow these things has been required of the city. It's not something the city came up with. So the city has to allow attached ADUs, and they have to allow attached ADUs for someone who has a house and wants to split that house into 2 units. That has to be allowed by the city. It's not a question of if we can. So the question, if you're going to split that, the code right now for detached units says it has to be behind the front house. If it's attached, it can't be behind the house by definition. So we need to make it clear that it can be part of the house. We just don't want the 2 front doors on the house. We want the other door to be on the side or the rear elevation. And we would draft that and bring it back and discuss that, but it's something that has come up in confusion, and I think it's easily resolved without causing any more problems.
So maybe I'll take a quick stab at this, okay, just to see if maybe I can synthesize what I'm hearing. I think it's fair because, one, I think what we're trying to do is help staff implement this section of the code. It's trying to help you really to just clarify this. And I understand there may be some ambiguity or misunderstanding, and that would include from this chair as well too. So maybe as part of any future discussion on this topic, just maybe to bring some diagram that maybe explains or clarifies what we're talking about and maybe how we're trying to reconcile that, because I think, one, we're trying to incentivize attaching the ADUs to the residents to a certain degree, I would think. And so the idea is clarifying this will make it easier on staff to interpret that. So again, this is just direction. We're not really making a recommendation this evening, but maybe as part of whatever recommendation we see from this point forward, maybe we can see that prior to accepting whatever that recommended change is. If the rest of the commission wishes to add or modify my comments, I'm more than happy to do that. Okay. So I'm okay making a motion, again, to allow for this clarification, but as part of the any future report, if you could just bring some dialogue, some discussion, preferably an example as well, I think that would help as well, to see how to maybe best explain, maybe visually, how this code requirement is presenting a bit of a challenge for staff and even for myself to understand from.
Understood, and we'll do our best, although we're not artists or
fair
architects.
Enough. Okay. All right. I hope that's okay. Okay. Yes, that's a motion.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Holtz.
Aye.
Commissioner Redholz.
Aye.
Commissioner Hing.
Aye.
Commissioner Castellanos.
Aye.
Chairman Jimenez.
Yes.
Okay.
So that concludes this study session.
Let me make a couple of closing comments. We do have a list of people that are notified on this, and some of you are on that list, some of you may not be. If you want to be on that list, please email me if you have my email address. Or if you don't have my email address, you can perhaps talk to someone who does, or call me or drop a write something down on your address and leave it with us tonight.
Fair enough. And again, thank you to everyone that came this evening to talk about this topic. We really appreciate it. That concludes non-hearing item number 4. Maybe we can pause for a couple minutes here to allow the audience to clear. Okay, we'll come back in 2 minutes. Thank you.
Let's express interest today. Quite an interest.
All right, folks, we'll be resuming shortly in about a minute here.
You too.
Commissioner Holtz? Commissioner Holtz, can you hear that?
Then it's going out. So make sure it's on. So right now the red light.
Keep the light on for you. How about that? Okay, so let's move on here, resume our hearing. This is a non-hearing item, number 5. This is a study session for Code Amendment 1803. It's a code amendment related to the downtown parking plan. Jeff, you have a presentation for us?
Yes, downtown plan commercial parking standards. The downtown plan was adopted in December of 2016 with commercial parking standard rate of 0.65 of standard municipal code calculation. In other words, 65% of what the municipal code standards would require. Code Amendment 1702 recommended allowing the 0.65 parking standard only for new development that's in compliance with the downtown standards, and other properties would continue to require parking at the municipal code standards. And the Planning Commission recommended approval of that. When it went to City Council, they determined that they would like further study of that, and so on August, they adopted the rest of that code amendment, but on August 2nd, 2018, they initiated Code Amendment, well, it's actually 1803 for this further review. Standards for the downtown plan were considered in 2016 at 6 Planning Commission study sessions, and you may, I think all of you guys were on at the time, so you may recall that, and 1 City Council study session. Planning Commission considered parking standards on April 26, 2016, and the City Council on June 13, 2016. Issues that considered at that time when it was presented to you in April of 2016 were that parking standards would require a provision of parking for uses on a property. In other words, parking standards require the parking be provided for parking on a single property for that single use. Second, urban development is closely together. Usually the buildings are closer together, less surface and parking lot and landscape areas. And patrons will likely visit more than one property during a visit, which we, in the general plan, is called the park once concept. This already happens in places like the mall, where you park once and go to different uses. Third, nearby residents may also choose to walk for visits, therefore reducing the need for a parking space. And that, lastly, parking uses, structures or surface parking separate uses and diminish the parking experience, and lastly, increase the cost of development. Parking is a very expensive part of development, especially when you're talking about structured or underground parking. So the question is alternatives for parking requirements in the downtown code. And what I'm going to do here is basically go back and review what we talked about in April of 2016. We talked about 3 possibilities at that time, and I'm going to cover those 3 and then add 2 more based on the discussion that we had at City Council. And these are the same exact options that we talked about on that day. A lot of this information in the staff report is exactly copied from that April 2016 report. Option 1, 80% of the total parking required per zoning code. This is based on the common facilities parking standard of the municipal code that allows retail shopping centers to request through a conditional use permit to reduce the required parking by up to 20%. Some of you may remember us doing that. Shopping centers have requested that and been approved for that. We have many shopping centers in town that have a lower parking requirement because they requested and received that. The idea is based on the concept that an individual's parking in a shopping center may visit more than one business at a time, the park once concept, that there are usually vacancies in a center at any given time, and that different uses have different peak hours of business or traffic generation. So this option recognizes that all those situations could also happen in a 3-story mixed-use building. Option 2, 75% of total parking required by the zoning code. This is based on the joint use parking standard in the municipal code that allows for primary nighttime uses to request through a conditional use permit to reduce the required parking by up to 50% when combined with primary daytime uses. Now, the most recent time that was used was when, and you always get it wrong, LA Fitness, right? LA Fitness was constructed in what used to be called Restaurant Row. There was a joint parking that was part of that process and reduced the required parking because parking can be shared between the restaurants and the fitness center. And it was proven at the time, we had a study at the time that showed that those uses had offset. They weren't daytime, nighttime, they were actually weekday, weekend peak uses. This is also referred to as shared parking, can basically allow a 25% reduction in the total parking requirement. This option recognizes that a multi-story building will likely have uses that have different peak hours of business and traffic generation within it. And third was, option 3 was 65% of the total parking required. This is based on the idea that both parking standards for common facilities and joint use may occur simultaneously. In addition, it recognizes that in an urban environment, a visitor may park in one building and visit others, and that there may be street parking opportunities available. And Glendora Avenue is a perfect example of that. Someone going to the movie theater may park in the movie theater parking lot and go to eat across the street at Glendora Shops, go to the movie, and then go and get ice cream or some dessert thing it's available on Glendora. And they've only parked in one spot. They didn't need 3 parking spaces for that visit. So that's the reason that we suggested the 65%. In thinking about this, after we went through the process with Planning Commission and City Council, we have 2 other options. One is basically don't make a change to the code, which that's not the right way to say it because we wouldn't be making a change to the downtown code, but require the downtown code to have the same parking standards as the rest of the city and the municipal code. So no difference between parking standards for buildings that are in the downtown or not in downtown. Property owners would continue to have the ability to submit conditional use permit applications to reduce the parking through common facilities and joint use. This would complicate applications and introduce a level of uncertainty for developers and could discourage development due to the uncertainty and the cost of providing additional parking. Keeping in mind that when they propose something, they've got to have a certain number of parking spaces as part of that. And if it's in the downtown area, it's going to be structured parking almost assuredly. And so they have to build, if they don't get the reduction, they have to build more parking, which may throw their economics off and make it not profitable to build. So that's the issue that we see there. This option would treat all developments in town identically, no matter what type of structures were developed. So that's option 4. Option 5 would be 90% of total parking required. This would be reduce the parking requirement of the downtown code to 90%, and also allow the ability to submit conditional use permit applications to reduce parking through common facilities and joint use. This option would provide some reduction, but would still complicate applications and introduce that level of uncertainty because they'd have to be requesting something that the Planning Commission has the discretion to approve or not approve. So those are the 5 options that we have identified. We continue to recommend option 3. This option allows for clear direction to the development community to design projects with a predictable number of parking spaces and recognizes that when uses are in close proximity, common facilities and joint use reductions should apply. Secondly, having predictable development standards is one of the most effective tools the city has to encourage new development. You know, historically, we encourage new development a lot of times through a redevelopment process. We don't have that available to us anymore. We have very limited ways of encouraging people to come to the city. This is one of the ways that we can do that. Question 2, and this really depends on the answer to question 1, but I'm going to go ahead and cover it, and then we can discuss. And this was the original question that we asked with the previous code amendment. Should parking standards in the downtown plan apply to just new development in compliance with the downtown plan or to all properties in the downtown? Currently, it's written not very clear. Current downtown code and staff recommendation is 0.65 for new development in compliance with downtown plan. Existing development standards would continue to subject existing development in the downtown, then would be continue to be subject to the municipal code parking standards. The purpose for the parking reduction is to recognize that in a more intense urban environment, the following issues are important to consider. Patrons are more likely to park once and walk from one property to another. Residents and workers are more likely to walk from one destination to another. Parking facilities, especially surface parking, divide uses and discourage pedestrian activity. And I can attest to that a little bit. The other day, we decided to go out to lunch to the new Gaucho Grill, which is a very good place to eat. So I decided to walk there from here. Let's try that one day. See how you like that.
Burn the calories.
You're burning calories. You're walking through a parking lot, so it's dodge car a little bit. There's no sidewalk that gets you in a straight line. You can walk around the street, but that's probably twice the distance that a straight line would be. So the mall is a very good example of what I'm talking about, where it separates uses. We'll have the same problem when Porto's opens. Somebody wants to go from Porto's to Sears. That is not going to be a pleasant walk. And that's because you have a parking facility that divides those things. That's the point I'm trying to make about separating the parking facilities, separating uses. Lastly, parking is very expensive to provide, especially in underground or in structures. Establishing parking standards that do not require excessive parking will reduce the cost of and encourage development. The city may also determine that it is appropriate to utilize the 0.65 standard for all properties in the downtown district. Utilizing that standard could lead to the following: reduction of surface parking in multi-tenant shopping centers through the construction of new buildings in the existing surface parking areas, increase in higher intensity parking uses like restaurants, medical office, and dental offices in buildings that are existing and with surface parking, and lastly, increased parking issues in existing uses with the majority of the parking spaces provided in the surface parking lots. So, in conclusion, the purpose of this study session is to provide the Planning Commission with discussion points and have a discussion here. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission review the information and provide appropriate direction to staff regarding this code amendment, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions from the Commission? None? Okay. No questions, just to be fair. There's no one in the public, but just if any members of the public interested in speaking on this topic, you can come down. You're more than welcome to talk about this. Going once and going twice. Okay, so no public testimony on this? Okay. And I guess Commission discussion. So Jeff, I guess just to try to catch up or capture some time here. So you're asking us look at a few options regarding the reduction in parking. We could ultimately leave it alone as well, as is, and move forward with no recommendation. But the only thing I do ask, Jeff, on the application of parking standards for new development, what about a change in use? If someone comes in, existing building, wishing to establish a new use that maybe, I guess, for lack of a better set of words, will intensify or trigger the parking requirements, is the idea that maybe they can take advantage of this, or could this provide clarity, or should we provide direction to allow maybe a change in use to take advantage of the reduction in parking? Is that maybe part of the question?
That is part of the whole discussion, because a shopping center that's in the downtown that may have no excess parking under the municipal code, with the 0.65, all of a sudden has 35% excess parking. And even if they have a parking problem or a parking problem in a certain area in the shopping center, they could introduce more of those high intensity uses like medical office, like dental office, or like a restaurant. So yes, that's the crux of the question. What we asked to begin with is that in staff's estimation, we may be headed for problems between tenants, because arguing over people taking up parking and then tenants not being able to stay in business because they don't have access to parking. And that's the concern we've heard in some places, not necessarily in downtown yet, but we have heard that in places, and that's the concern that we had and why we brought it forward to request whether the 0.65 should be a blanket across every place in downtown, or if it should be just for buildings that comply with the development standards. It was crafted for those buildings that were constructed in compliance and with the vision of the downtown plan. It wasn't ever necessarily meant for, I always throw the mall under the bus, but it wasn't meant for the mall to reduce the mall's parking so that they could build other buildings in their parking lot. That wasn't the intent.
Fair enough. Okay, that clarifies that. Okay.
But also looking into the future, if the mall are changing its uses. For example, LA Fitness usually was never in the mall in the past, but now they are. And LA Fitness is 24?
It's Gold's Gym.
Gold's Gym, okay.
LA Fitness on the
Gold's.
other side of town.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that Gold's Gym, or the gym, people normally use during the evening hours.
True.
So their uses are different. I mean, as looking into the future, if the tenants' use are different than what normal mall hours are being used, then the parking requirement can be and may be different?
Well, let me, if we're going to talk about the mall, let me be clear on the mall. The mall does not have a parking problem. They have excess parking right now. And as it's a little bit difficult to understand. I know the code is kind of complex. But what I just talked about with common facilities, the mall can come in and request a conditional use permit to allow them to reduce their parking. So even if they were at the limit of the parking and they didn't have enough parking to introduce, like Gold's Gym wasn't there and they're going to want to come in or they want to expand, even if they didn't have enough, they could propose that conditional use permit and the Planning Commission can approve it and the gym can go in. So that's why I'm saying, so that those tools are already in place for those centers. And they are in place for all the centers in the downtown. What we did there was we tried to reduce a lot for the developer's purpose to reduce the cost of providing parking that, well, let's also discuss this. If we go out there, even in the peak period on most Saturdays at the mall, how many empty spaces are out there? So if you think about that, if it's 25%, now you're requiring someone to build parking that's going to be vacant most of the time, 25% vacant most of the time. See, that's why you're trying to reduce parking. You're trying to eliminate so you don't have all this excess parking. There can be an argument that excess parking is good. I get that. In the mall, it is good because in the Christmas season, it's sometimes totally used. So, but those are the issues that we brought it up for. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, Commissioner.
You know, and that's kind of the crux of the whole general plan update, too.
Well, at least the downtown plan.
The downtown, yeah, exactly. Yeah. The downtown portion of it was to, you know, kind of get more pedestrian friendly and to not be a city that's just, you know, parking lots. And, you know, that was beaten to our heads. You know, if you look at the overview of the city, I mean, you look at, you know, the space that is, you know, maybe perhaps wasted with all this excess parking, that where that land could be put to a much better use, which is why we did that in the first place. So I think it makes sense to follow through and, you know, finish it, do it properly.
Okay.
Probably be best just two questions. One, if you want to continue with the same recommendation on that option, which was option 3, and secondarily, which was the original question, do you want to give me, does the commission want to have it in the downtown plan that 0.65 is only for new development in compliance with the downtown plan? That's the two questions. So I think we could probably do that in one motion from what I'm hearing.
So the motion would be, one, leave it alone, and the 0.65 is only applicable to new development. That's it.
Yes. If
okay.
That's
okay. We'll make that motion then.
Jose makes that motion. Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
We have a first by myself, second by Commissioner Holtz.
Commissioner Holtz.
Aye.
Commissioner Redholz.
Aye.
Commissioner Hing. Aye. Commissioner Castellanos.
Aye.
Chairman Jimenez.
Yes. So this concludes non-hearing items. Item 5. Moving on back to continuation of oral communication. No one in the public. Let the record reflect. Commission reports, comments, and miscellaneous items. Okay, Commissioner Redholz, please.
Yeah, just very briefly, I just want to remind the vast viewing audience, since there's not a lot of people here in the chairs, but tomorrow night here in these chambers is the first of 3 candidate forums for the 3 districts that are up in, that are on the ballot in November. Tomorrow night is district number 2, and the forum will be here. If you get here at 6:30, I believe the candidates will be here at that time for kind of a, a meet and greet, handshake kind of a thing, and, some informal conversation. Then at 7 o'clock will be the formal forum itself. So, and it's open. You don't have to live in that district. I mean, even though we're districts, we still got a city to govern. So, I would encourage all residents to attend all 3 if you can, but tomorrow night is the first one right here at 6:30. So I'm just letting people know that if you want to be heard and you want your questions addressed, you want to find out where the candidates stand on issues that concern you, that's the time to come here and ask questions and be heard.
Yeah, there's a flyer, I think, flyers outside that show the 3 dates and the times of the district. It's got a blue and red, white, and blue thing.
Thank you for that. Very useful, and I think I attended some of the previous ones during some previous election cycles, and they were very informative and would encourage definitely the members of the public, whoever's still up at this time of the night, to maybe join us here these next few meetings. Anyone else wishing to add any items? Just a quick one, Jeff. The other day I went to the Goodwill up on Azusa, right next to the lab.
Not sure.
Oh, thank you. Got it, $3. No, it's okay. I had to take a minute to absorb that. I could be a frugal guy. I need to make that, those car payments on that Ford. So, and Jeff, while I was back there donating some, some stuff from the house, I noticed that the parking lot, the parking lighting is off. I don't know if it's damaged or turned off, and it's a bit of a little, interesting area to navigate in the evening hours. You have a series of mature trees back there, and then with the absence of a parking lighting, it's just, it could be a little bit hair-raising. I was hoping maybe someone could take a look at that. If they can talk to the property owner, maybe see what's going on with the lights. The Norms, by the way, that's adjacent to it, it's well lit. I mean, you can walk all day and night, and actually you feel very comfortable and safe. But adjacent to that, though, it's very dark, and you don't know what's kind of lurking behind there. So that's really my only comment there. That's it. Nothing else. Jeff, Planning Director reports?
We have the forthcoming before you. We don't have any items for September 25th, but we do have some for October 9th. So and we only show one there, but we're pretty positive there's going to be a couple others that are going to be ready for that night. So we expect there to be a meeting that night. We also have subcommittee minutes for August 14th and August 18th. I did want to take just a... Yeah, well, so Ron's reminding me that the appeal for the Pacific Lane tract map that came before the Planning Commission was approved. It was appealed to the City Council, and it's scheduled for the October 2nd City Council meeting. Okay. So it was a little bit longer just because people were going to be out of town. So it was worked out that that's the date that everybody could make it that was involved. I did want to take a moment to kind of discuss the Planning Department budget, just so you're aware. I think you guys are aware that we did lose Christine D'Alestrino. She left the city and is now employed with another city. We're not immediately going to replace that position, so we're down from 4 planners to 3, which, if my math is correct, is about 25%. I'm not going to guarantee that my math is correct, but so there's clearly an effect on us. That's not something that you just absorb and you say, well, it's no big deal. It is a big deal. Christine was a very vital part of our team. We are moving forward, and we're doing the best we can. As you saw tonight, we're trying to use our interns to their highest and best use for their benefit and for ours, and we will continue to work in that regard. It's interesting to look back. I went back to 2008. which was the peak, and I've been here about 20 years. 2008, the planning department had 9 full-time employees. Now we have 4 full-time employees and no paid interns. So that gives you an idea of the change. And we went from 9 in 2008 to 6 in 2012 to 5.5 in 2017, and now 4 in 2018. So we're not alone in that. I'm not up here to say that we're the only ones that took cut. Almost every department in the city has taken some cuts, and some of them fairly drastic. So I just want you to be aware of that. We're going to continue to try to do the best we can. There may be things that happen, and that may be the reason, because we lost 25% of our staff and a good portion of our funding for that as well. But we're going to continue on. We're very committed to doing the best we can for West Covina. We will continue to be committed to that.
Sure, the workload hasn't slowed down either.
Yeah. I don't think the workload has slowed down, and we do expect some larger projects that seem to be on the horizon looming before us.
I have a question which you may or may not be able to or choose to answer. Christina left voluntarily, correct?
That is correct.
If she hadn't left voluntarily, would she still be here?
I don't know that I know the answer to that. I think she would. It was more of an attrition issue, and that wasn't the only one. We've had other attrition issues, and clearly that's not a bad way to address shortfalls in funding, is through attrition, because nobody really gets hurt. Everybody just tries to fill in where the empty seat was. So yeah, that's how it was. We were pretty much done with our budget when she was offered another job.
So there is no plan to replace that position?
Not immediately.
It's a huge, I think, undertaking if you think about it, just the magnitude, the size of the city. And then the resources that are allocated to the department and the level of work, and not just the level of work, it's really the quality of the product that you have to churn out for your staff. I'm sure it's a huge burden, but at least I'm very thankful. I'm sure the rest of the commission, we're very thankful for the hard work that you put in every day, and please let it be known that we appreciate everything you do for us. You may not send us to the conferences anymore, but we're not going to hold that against you either.
No. But you know what, if I may just, when you went through the budget process and you look at the pie chart, the planning department portion of that pie chart, you need a magnifying glass to see it, and the planning department, in my view, is just, vital and critical to the success of a city. And you look at that compared to the other departments, and you just look at that little sliver, and then they want you to cut. Nothing, hey, I don't want to get into that discussion, but I think I just did. But, I was amazed at how much of a, small portion of that pie chart, let's just say that.
Well, if we all ate pies of that size, we probably wouldn't have to. We could probably get smaller clothes sizes, so that's something to consider. That's all I had to bring up.
Okay, so we talked about city council actions. I think we're preparing to adjourn, but I think before we do that, I was thinking back about the events of 17 years ago, really, today. Okay, well, it was a day, at least for me, where this country, I felt we lost a little bit of our innocence that particular day, all the folks that lost their lives and how it impacted us in one way, shape, or form. And I'm sure if any of the commissioners wish to add, but I would like to maybe just have a moment of a silent prayer before we adjourn. But again, I invite the rest of the commissioners to comment as well.
I was just going to say that, I'm glad you brought that up. I have it in my little notes to adjourn in honor and in memory of those thousands of people that lost their lives on 9/11, number one, and number two, in honor of the first responders, yes, when others were running away from the explosion and all the turmoil and havoc. Those first responders were heading towards it to do their job and protect the people. And so I think it is, when we do adjourn, I think it should be noted that we're adjourning in honor and in memory of those people. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to add? You want to take us home there, Commissioner Redholz, then?
Huh?
I was going to give you the honors of...
Yeah. I want to make the motion to adjourn, and in honor of the over 3,000 individuals who lost their lives 17 years ago today, a day that we will all remember, and in their memory, and also in honor of all of the public safety and first responders that responded and risked their lives to save as many people as they could and get them out of there. I think that those people should be honored and remembered forever. You know, I mean, that was a day that, as the chair said, that this country, it's one of those days, like when President Kennedy was assassinated, it's one of those days that just changed, you know, the country. Yeah, that's another one. So anyway, that's my motion to adjourn in their honor and their memory, and thank them.
Let's have a moment of silence, and we'll have the gavel here. Okay. Thank you. Let the record reflect it's 9:53. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.